Chapter 320. Refining treasures with the golden body. Just now, Luo Fan had relied on the aura that permeated the entire dream world to trace the connate, inextinguishable spirit light that was hidden at the back of the dream world and could not be detected at all. He had completely avoided the process of killing all living beings in the dream world and destroying everything in the dream world. This was the supreme power that Luo Fan had gained after attaining the Grand Unity Tao fruit. He did not need to know how the connate, inextinguishable spirit light was hidden, nor did he need to understand the structure of the dream world. He only needed to grasp a trace of its aura, and he could find its source through the connection determined by the supreme Tao. At this moment, the entire world was filled with the aura of the connate, inextinguishable spirit light, so it was naturally much easier for him to find its source. He had even used the process of Luo Ho's concealment of the connate, inextinguishable spirit light to gain complete control of the entire dream world. The emperor that Luo Ho's consciousness had transformed into sat on the throne and looked down at Luo Fan's actions with a slightly dazed look in his eyes. This dream world was a complete world that he had perfected countless times over the past tens of millions of years. It could be said that he had exhausted all of his abilities. The operation of the entire dream world was complicated and profound, and it had the style of the primordial world. He had been quite confident when he had created this world. He had thought that even if Luo Fan had the ability to find the connate, inextinguishable spirit light without destroying the entire world, he would definitely have to go through a lot of trouble. He had not expected that Luo Fan would actually obtain the connate, inextinguishable spirit light so easily. You really did break through. Luo let out a long sigh. Although he was formed from a bit of Luo Fan's soul, he had once been one with Luo Fan after all. He was familiar with the general state of the Tao fruit, so he naturally knew that Luo Fan must have attained the Grand Unity Tao fruit and obtained an unimaginable breakthrough to be able to infiltrate and control the dream world so easily. What else do you have to say now? Luo Fan smiled. What else can I say? With such a huge gap between them, it's natural for you to win. But don't even think about devouring me. The emperor had already returned to normal and sighed helplessly. No. Since you've become yourself, you're no longer me. Devouring you won't do me any good. Instead, it will make my divine soul become impure, so I won't devour you. Why don't you guard this world for me and control the Tao of this world together with Wuji Boy? Luo Fan chuckled and said, What's the difference between this and being devoured by you? The emperor shook his head and said, I was once you, so I'm naturally aware that you'll definitely leave a restriction at the core of my soul. If it's like that, then my life and my thoughts will be in your hands. Do you think I'd agree? If that's the case, then forget it. It's impossible for me to allow someone like you who knows me so well to live freely. Since you're unwilling to do this and that, then don't blame me. Luo Fan had already guessed that this would be the case, but he still couldn't help but sigh. Ha! Come. Now that the entire world is under your control, you can do whatever you want. The emperor laughed. After he finished laughing, a profound and indescribable aura radiated from his body. It gradually fused with the void and fused with the indescribable truth of the Tao in the void. With this change, the emperor's eyes gradually dimmed. The aura of the emperor who controlled everything and was the ruler of all things in the universe instantly weakened by tens of thousands of times. Although it still existed, it was only in the realm of mortals. Luo Fan sighed. He knew that Luo Ho had already fused his consciousness with the world. The emperor in front of him was just an ordinary clone. It was no different from the surrounding palaces, rocks, plants, and beasts. He couldn't be bothered with the emperor anymore. He gripped the innate, indestructible spirit light and took a step forward. His consciousness stepped out of the world and returned to the apex hall. From the outside world, the world looked like a disk formed from some kind of profound light, and it was only 30 meters in diameter. Just as Luo Ho had said, Luo Fan had already used his peerless techniques to control the entire world. At this moment, there was not a single secret or mystery in the world in his eyes. With a wave of his hand, the world quickly compressed and condensed. In the blink of an eye, it was compressed into a palm-sized round copper mirror. The back of the round copper mirror was carved with countless profound and indescribable symbols. Every single stroke seemed to be developing some kind of indescribable supreme Tao. The front of the mirror didn't reflect anything. Instead, it was like it was playing a movie, playing an entire world. Now that things have come to this, are you still not willing to give up? Luo Fan sighed. At this moment, all of Luo Ho's consciousness had fused with the world in the dream. If he wanted to destroy it, he would have to destroy the entire dream and bear the consequences of destroying the world. This was Luo Ho's final move, seeking survival in the face of defeat. He knew that Luo Fan definitely wasn't willing to bear the consequences because of him. Luo Fan smiled and waved his hand. Countless changes occurred in the minor chiliocosm. In an instant, a mysterious and indescribable power was added to the copper mirror. Along with this force, strands of dark light gradually rose from the surface of the copper mirror. After the mysterious light rose, it was swept away by the minor chiliocosm and disappeared without a trace. Infinite time and space, infinite desires, infinite powers. I only ask, is there freedom? A long sigh came from the mysterious light. That was Luo Ho's voice. After the sigh, the mysterious light faded away. The world on the front of the copper mirror also changed strangely. It was as if the scene in a movie had frozen. Whether it was the mountains, rivers, flowers, trees, insects, fish, birds, beasts, humans, demons, Buddhas, demons, and even the formless wind, water, thunder, and lightning, everything had stopped. Under Luo Fan's will, deep in his spiritual world, his soul, which had already transformed into Pan Gubon, opened its mouth and blew. A magical gust of wind seemed to be sent out of his spiritual world, out of his body, and came to the bronze mirror. The wind drilled into the mirror, then slightly pushed at a mysterious spot in the world created by the bronze mirror. The world in the mirror instantly came alive. The wind blew, the water flowed, the thunder rumbled, and the lightning flashed. Flowers, plants, fishes, birds, and animals began moving. This world in the dream is quite magical. If I refine it, I can leave a legacy for the Tao through dreams, magic. Luo Fan sighed. He raised his hand and waved. Mysterious rays of light gathered in the void of the minor chiliocosm. Like divine dragons, they rushed into the surface of the copper mirror. As the light surged into the mirror, countless mysterious three-dimensional spell symbols emerged on the surface of the mirror. These three-dimensional spell symbols connected with each other, clashed, and regrouped. Gradually, they transformed into 36 layers of magic seals, wrapping the mirror up layer by layer. After a while, the 36 restrictions abruptly shrunk and completely fused with the copper mirror. An embryonic object was condensed at the core of the copper mirror, and it seemed to be nurturing some indescribable and mysterious existence. After this existence appeared, the world in front of the mirror seemed to become more natural and real. At the same time, everything in the world was connected to the embryo-like object. The life cores of the countless creatures that died instantly appeared in the embryo. Then, the embryo-like thing underwent some strange changes and sent them back into the world to be reincarnated. Luo Fan's eyes penetrated through every inch of this bronze mirror and understood every mystery within it. He was satisfied and secretly nodded his head. At this moment, the copper mirror had already become a magic artifact with 36 restrictions. If it was refined properly, then it would only require a few periods of time before it could be transformed into a formidable abode magic artifact. Moreover, the dreamland formed by the Rahu clan within it would transform into a true and complete minor dimension that was capable of warping time and expanding space. At that time, the minor chiliocosm evolved from the dream world would have a life force that could create tens of thousands of creatures. It was even more mysterious than Luo Fan's minor chiliocosm. On the other hand, The embryo condensed from the 136 restrictions would grow into the treasure spirit of this abode, and it innately contained the boundless profundities of the Tao corroboration through dreams. Once it was formed, the living being that refined this magical artifact into a magical treasure would directly possess the Tao fruit cultivated by the Tao, proving through dreams. They would be able to distort dreams and reality at will, and possess the supreme ability to create things. If I didn't have the infinite void palace, I'm afraid I'd be tempted too. Luo Fan sighed. With a wave of his hand, he put the bronze mirror into his universe in his sleeve. With a light step, he arrived at the platform at the center of the lightning pool inside the hall. After tens of millions of years of continuous accumulation, the earth thunder contained in the lightning pool had already reached an unimaginable level. At a glance, it was so thick that it was like a solid. Occasionally, when power surged, the water in the lightning pool would surge slightly, giving birth to an incomparably heavy and majestic aura. Luo Fan looked at the lightning pool and raised his hand. A ball of water with a diameter of 10 feet floated in front of him. He raised his hand and gently touched the ball of water. Sensing the supreme power contained in it, Luo Fan knew that if this ball of water exploded, everything within 100 miles would be turned into powder. Knowing this, a trace of joy flashed in Luo Fan's mind. This lightning has probably turned illusory into reality. If I refine it a little, I'm afraid it will give birth to spirituality. With this thought, he casually pointed. From the inside to the outside of the pool of water, countless mysterious and inexplicable three-dimensional symbols flashed. These three-dimensional symbols were extremely mysterious and complex. After they appeared, they reorganized at an incomparable speed, and in the blink of an eye, 36 restrictions were formed. As the 36 restrictions formed, the pool of water quickly condensed and became pure. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a yellow-skinned man. His upper body was naked, and he wore a yellow turban. His eyes flashed with electricity, and his body exuded a steady and powerful aura. After the man appeared, he blinked and bowed to Luo Fan. The yellow turban thunder spirit thanks Master for creating it. Good. Seeing this, Luo Fan couldn't help but be overjoyed. This item was refined by him according to the Hercules summoning technique. Because the material used was the lightning pool water that had been condensed to the limit, it gave birth to a mysterious change. Just as it was formed, it had a different type of consciousness similar to the spirit of a treasure. This consciousness was even a little higher than the spirit of a treasure, because this consciousness had a trace of self-awareness. From now on, you will walk around the top of the hall and manage all the yellow turban warriors. Although Luo Fan was very happy, he didn't forget to arrange the yellow turban thunder spirit. Understood. The yellow turban thunder spirit bowed again and turned into a flash of yellow lightning, disappearing from the platform. It went to gather all the yellow turban warriors and arrange their work. Just the Hercules summoning technique can refine such a creature. If it is used to refine a magic tool, it can definitely shorten the time it takes for a magic tool to become a magic tool. This thought flashed in Luo Fan's mind. After thinking, he casually waved his hand, and 100 feet wide lightning pool water left the lightning pool and floated above him. With a flip of his left hand, the bronze mirror-like magic tool that he had just refined appeared in his left hand. After this bronze mirror appeared, it suddenly produced an endless suction force. Under the effect of this suction, a stream of water that looked like a divine dragon emerged from the lightning pool and rushed straight into the surface of the copper mirror. It passed through the dream world that had evolved on the surface of the copper mirror and entered the depths of the copper mirror. Then, it seeped directly into the embryo formed by the 36 restrictions. The embryo was extremely small. Compared to the 100 feet wide lightning pool water, it was like an ant. However, when the 100 feet wide lightning pool water completely entered it, it didn't cause any changes to the embryo. It was as if there was an endless void inside, and the 100 feet wide lightning pool water was insignificant. Luo Fan's eyes flashed with gold and silver light. He had completely seen through all the changes in the bronze mirror. With the replenishment of this pool water, the transformation time will be shortened by at least 100 times. I need to find a master for it as soon as possible. Luo Fan thought to himself. With a casual flip of his hand, he'd already placed the bronze mirror into his sleeve. Suddenly, Luo Fan sensed something. With a slight thought, he understood what was going on. He raised his hand and waved. Lei Jiuxiao appeared on the platform at the center of the lightning pool. Lei Jiuxiao's state of mind was astonishing. He didn't change his expression at all when the space suddenly changed. He only treated it as a cool breeze. When he saw Luo Fan, he bowed slightly and said, "Greetings, Master. I have finished refining the Annihilation World and have come to report." Not bad. Although this magic tool was originally ownerless, it's quite rare to be able to refine it so quickly. Luo Fan smiled slightly. "I dare not accept Master's praise." Lei Jiuxiao's expression didn't change. "Fine. You're different from your senior brothers and sisters. They're rather simple when they cultivate and don't have much understanding of the great Tao. Therefore, I can impart cultivation techniques according to the nature of their bodies. You, on the other hand, have lived for tens of millions of years and have a certain understanding of the great Tao. What I impart might not be suitable for the Tao you're comprehending. What cultivation technique do you want to learn?" Luo Fan smiled and said. Lei Jiuxiao was slightly stunned. He turned around and bowed. "I didn't have a body for tens of millions of years. I can only cultivate my mind. If we're talking about comprehension, I'm only a little bit on the Tao of heart cultivation. Therefore, I'm willing to cultivate the Tao of heart cultivation. There are many Tao of heart cultivation. I have the golden body proving Tao art. After cultivating it, your mind will become solid, and you'll be able to transform into a million forms. You'll be invincible. Are you willing to learn it?" Luo Fan said with a smile. "I wonder if this art can achieve Tao fruit?" Lei Jiuxiao pondered. "Of course it can. Although I'm proficient in tens of thousands of techniques, I'll teach my disciples the Tao fruit they cultivate. No matter what path they follow, they'll eventually achieve Tao fruit. There's no difference in that." Luo Fan smiled. "If that's the case, I'm willing to learn. Master, please teach me the golden body proving Tao art." Lei Jiuxiao knelt on the ground and kowtowed. Luo Fan nodded. "Then stand up. I'll teach you this art." When Lei Jiuxiao heard this, he stood up and bowed to the side. With a thought, Luo Fan raised his hand and pointed. A speck of light rushed out from his hand and directly entered the Niwen Palace between Lei Jiuxiao's eyebrows. It rushed along a mysterious spot and entered Lei Jiuxiao's sea of consciousness. Lei Jiuxiao's body had been tempered by the earth lightning pool for tens of millions of years and had long since turned into the body of a lightning spirit. Although his sea of consciousness was not very vast, only having a circumference of 10,000 zhong, it was a world of lightning. There were countless lightning bolts on a mountainside, countless lightning dragons shuttling in the sky, and a huge vortex of lightning constantly spinning below. Lei Jiuxiao's soul was at the center of this vortex. It was a thin youth whose body was gradually soaked in yellow lightning. After the speck of light from Luo Fan entered the sea of consciousness, it directly entered the soul at the center of the vortex. It was transformed into a huge amount of information and completely integrated into the soul's memory. In the blink of an eye, countless words and diagrams flashed through the eyes of Lei Jiuxiao's soul. His entire body exuded an aura of enlightenment. In the outside world, Lei Jiuxiao's body also underwent a huge change. Boundless lightning suddenly flickered around Lei Jiuxiao's body. Lightning snakes condensed and the void collapsed slightly. A moderate suction force appeared out of nowhere. The pool of lightning around the platform rippled slightly as a result of the suction force. Hundreds of water droplets rose up and were sucked into Lei Jiuxiao's body. Luo Fan smiled faintly when he saw this. He didn't stop it and just watched quietly. Chapter 321. transforming the clone into a treasure and refining the eyes. The hundreds of drops of lightning pool water that had rushed into Lei Jiuxiao's sea of consciousness contained extremely dense earth element lightning. Due to the density of the lightning reaching a certain level, it had undergone a slight transformation, containing a faint but wondrous life force. As soon as the several hundred drops of lightning pool water rushed into Lei Jiuxiao's soul, they instantly penetrated deep into it. In an instant, Lei Jiuxiao's entire soul was dyed yellow. Countless bolts of lightning constantly flashed around him, as if he was wearing a suit of lightning. Lei Jiuxiao's body had been tempered in the depths of the lightning pool for tens of millions of years, and he had long become a lightning spirit. To the lightning spirit, the lightning pool water was nothing compared to a billionth of the lightning pool water that he had come into contact with over tens of millions of years. It was like clear water to an ordinary person, so it naturally couldn't affect his body at all. However, to Lei Jiuxiao's soul, which had been the cycle of reincarnation for countless lives, the earth lightning was extremely foreign to it. As soon as the several hundred drops of water entered his soul, it was like a prairie fire. The moment his soul came into contact with the several hundred drops of water, the earth lightning in the pool water would instantly explode and engulf his entire soul. The lightning that erupted from the several hundred drops of water constantly flickered, directly penetrating into the depths of Lei Jiuxiao's soul. In an instant, it had wrapped around every inch of Lei Jiuxiao's soul from the inside out. Lei Jiuxiao's mind had already been tempered to a point where it was even more powerful than Luo Fan had imagined after countless lives of reincarnation, so the strength of his soul was definitely not weak. If an ordinary person's soul was splashed by a single drop of water, they would probably be completely torn to pieces in an instant and completely pulverized. However, Lei Jiuxiao was different. The moment the earth thunder erupted and completely engulfed his entire divine soul, he didn't feel flustered because of these powerful external forces. With a slight movement of his mind, the golden body proving Tao technique that Luo Fan had just taught him quickly flowed through his mind. This golden body proving Tao art was specially created by Luo Fan for Lei Jiuxiao based on his own Tao fruit and Great Tao. The entire technique was of the same origin as the Great Tao and cultivation technique that Lei Jiuxiao had pondered over for tens of millions of years. Because of this, Lei Jiuxiao felt a sense of familiarity from the bottom of his heart as soon as he saw this cultivation technique. It was as if he had been cultivating this cultivation technique for countless years. Lei Jiuxiao was naturally immersed in the Tao realm created by the cultivation technique when this extremely strange and familiar feeling appeared. As he sank into the Tao realm, his divine soul gradually produced an extremely mysterious and incredible golden brilliance. As soon as the golden light appeared, it was like a prairie fire, directly illuminating his entire divine soul, directly wrapping his entire divine soul in it. The endless earth lightning contained in the several hundred drops of water seemed to be tamed by the golden brilliance. It wrapped around the golden brilliance gently and was gradually changed by the golden brilliance. The golden brilliance gradually penetrated into his body and completely fused with it. As the golden brilliance grew stronger, it also carried a hint of the mysterious aura of a lightning spirit. It complemented Lei Jiuxiao's lightning spirit body, causing the connection between the two to become even closer and making his divine soul's control over his body even more refined. Lei Jiuxiao's mind was in a daze. His outer body floated in the air, and in the blink of an eye, millions of rays of golden brilliance seeped out of his sea of consciousness. They directly permeated every inch of space in his body before radiating outwards. They constantly condensed and transformed, gradually forming a golden ring of light behind his head. As the golden ring of light rippled slightly, an unbelievably great power appeared out of nowhere. It caused the surrounding space to distort slightly and enveloped the entire platform in an unfathomable and dignified aura. Luo Fan smiled slightly when he saw this. He casually pointed a finger and teleported Lei Jiuxiao's body to a secret room in the hall. The golden body proving Wei was his creation, so he naturally knew that Lei Jiuxiao's cultivation was on the right track. Lei Jiuxiao's divine soul was rapidly strengthening, slowly transforming into an invincible golden body. According to his current transformation speed, it would be absolutely impossible for him to complete the transformation without several tens of thousands of years. Moreover, it would be difficult for him to wake up before the transformation was complete. As a result, there was naturally no need for him to stay here any longer. After sending Lei Jiuxiao off, Luo Fan connected to the clone artifact outside the space-time illusion at the foot of Buzhou Mountain with a thought. With a slight thought, in the blink of an eye, endless information was transmitted from the clone magic treasure into his mind through some mysterious and unfathomable connection. As he read through the endless information, it didn't take long for him to have a clear grasp of the changes in the primordial world over the past tens of thousands of years. I see. It seems that when the primordial calamity arrives in the future, the resistance of the primordial world doesn't just come from me. Understanding the changes, Luo Fan smiled slightly and was overjoyed. In these 20,000 years, a few Yuan Hui had passed in the space-time illusory land, and the number of innate gods invited by mountain god Buzhou and the others had already exceeded 100,000. These connate gods that were invited were all born connate. They were born with the essence of the primordial world, and their aptitudes were naturally astonishing. With such shocking aptitudes and the cultivation conditions created by Luo Fan, those innate gods improved extremely quickly after obtaining the correct cultivation path in the past few Yuan Hui. Now, there is already 1% of them, which was close to 1,000 innate gods, who had already broken through the rogue immortal realm and reached the true immortal realm. There were even 3 of them who had reached the peak of the true immortal realm, and were only one step away from breaking through the true immortal realm and becoming a golden immortal. Although this power is slightly insufficient, it's still passable. If I add some other methods, I should be able to defeat the invasion of the heavenly transformation. Now that there are only a few thousand years left, it's time for you Su and the others to return and cultivate properly. Luo Fan thought to himself. As he thought about this, a mysterious thought passed through some mysterious and unfathomable place and flowed to 5 locations on the primordial world that were extremely far away from Buzhou Mountain. Those 5 locations were where Yu Su, the god of Buzhou Mountain, Fentian, Yuan Tong, and Taoist master Tanmu were. Among the 4 of them, the furthest away from Buzhou Mountain was probably hundreds of millions of kilometers away. However, the thought that Luo Fan sent out arrived at their location without the slightest delay. This was absolutely impossible for Luo Fan before he attained the primordial Tao fruit. However, it was so easy for him to do it now. It was as if he was flipping his hand. From this, it could be seen how great Luo Fan's improvement was after attaining the primordial Tao fruit. After a while, Luo Fan's heart moved slightly, and a smile appeared on his face. However, through some sort of mysterious and unfathomable connection, he had already received the thoughts of the 5 of them just now. He knew that the 5 of them understood his intentions and indicated that they would rush back to Buzhou Mountain as soon as possible. At the same time, through the minds of the 5 of them, he knew that almost all of them had improved tremendously in these past few years. Yuan Tong and the others, who had already attained the Tao, had already reached the peak of the true immortal realm. Even Yuan Qi, who had the lowest cultivation, had already reached the peak of the rogue immortal realm. He was only a step away from becoming a true immortal. As expected, traveling through the primordial world and experiencing the boundless scenery of the primordial world is indeed beneficial to my cultivation. Luo Fan couldn't help but sigh. Since the innate gods in the untainted world could be born innately, none of them were simple. Every one of them had great fortune and great luck. Luo Fan was able to attain the primordial unity Tao fruit through the tens of thousands of years of travel. Naturally, the other innate gods could also make great progress during this period of time. With their strength, this great calamity will no longer be a problem. Luo Fan smiled. With a step, he had already stepped out of the limitless palace and arrived above the liquefied primordial energy ocean at the top of Buzhou Mountain. Looking down, the world was under his feet, and a supreme sense of heroism instantly soared into the sky. With a light step, the space of the primordial world distorted slightly, and Luo Fan had already disappeared from the top of Buzhou Mountain. He had combined the short step, yet worlds apart divine ability with his power to control the heaven and earth within a 10,000-mile radius, and directly teleported away. In a short while, Luo Fan had already appeared at the foot of Buzhou Mountain, where the space-time illusory realm was located. The clone magic tool that had been sitting cross-legged outside the space-time illusory realm for tens of thousands of years saw Luo Fan's arrival. It stood up and revealed a slight smile on its face, but it did not say a word. With a thought, Luo Fan raised his hand and waved. Countless rays of light appeared in the void, and the extremely mysterious sound of the great Tao appeared out of thin air. A strange fragrance assailed the nostrils, and the heavenly flowers fell from the void. The moment they hit the ground, they disappeared without a trace. Along with these strange phenomena, the 36 restrictions of the clone magic tool suddenly appeared, instantly forming a sphere with a diameter of 100 feet, layer by layer wrapping the clone magic tool's shadow within it. The heavenly flowers, the strange fragrance, the sound of the great Tao, and the rays of light changed continuously. After a while, it shook the world. The 36 restrictions scattered extremely quickly during the process, and reorganized extremely quickly. In a short while, they had compressed and reorganized into an extremely strange layer. It was like a thin gauze fluttering in the air. It seemed to exist, but also seemed not to exist at the same time. There were countless strange lines on the surface of this strange existence, and there were also countless strange lights and shadows flashing rapidly. These lines and shadows seemed to contain infinite life, infinite heaven and earth, and infinite truth. At this moment, the strange existence rapidly shrank. In the blink of an eye, it had shrunk into an incomparably small, invisible existence, like a speck of dust, and instantly entered the clone magic tool. The moment the speck of dust entered the clone magic tool materialized again and instantly emitted a blurry brilliance. The clone magic tool was completely covered by this brilliance and could no longer be seen. At this moment, the clone magic tool's aura increased by hundreds, then thousands of times. In a short while, it had increased to tens of thousands of times its original aura. If measured by the realm of a cultivator, then it had already reached the peak of the golden celestial realm. Open. The clone magic tool opened its mouth slightly, raised its hand, and tore at the sides. The endless phenomena instantly disappeared. The aura emanating from his body, which was enough to shake the heavens and the earth, caused the entire void and the ground to tremble slightly, disappeared in an instant. When the clone magic tool looked again, it looked like an ordinary person. There was not a trace of aura leaking from its body. "I'll leave this place to you," Luo Fan said with a smile. "You. Why speak so much?" The clone magic tool also smiled. However, compared to before, this doppelganger magical tool seemed to have a little more autonomy and agility. It was no longer just a puppet controlled by Luo Fan. However, through Luo Fan's actions just now, this doppelganger magical treasure had already become a magical treasure. The existence formed by the fusion of the 36 restrictions was the treasure spirit of the magic tool. However, because this magic tool was Luo Fan's clone magic tool, it did not need a treasure spirit. Therefore, this treasure spirit was directly refined by Luo Fan and transformed into his own clone. The moment this magic tool became a magic tool, because of the rules of the primordial world, a supreme great Tao descended from the unseen world, directly increasing the nature of this magic tool by tens of thousands of times. It surpassed the strength of the itinerant immortal realm cultivators and reached the perfected immortal realm. In addition, with the help of Luo Fan's Primordial Unity Dao fruit, the power of this clone magic tool was increased to the peak of the golden immortal realm. If not for the fact that this was already the limit of an immortal treasure, it might even be able to increase and directly possess the power of Luo Fan's main body. Luo Fan handed over this place to his doppelganger magic tool. He took a step forward and arrived above the space-time illusion. With a light wave of his hand, endless rays of light emerged and directly wrapped around the entire space-time illusion. Along with the rays of light, there was the mysterious sound of the great Tao. Countless heavenly flowers appeared, and countless strange fragrances assailed his nostrils. Although the scale of the phenomenon this time was not as large as when he refined the clone magic tool into a magic treasure, it was not small and could be considered earth-shattering. With this change, the formation that formed the space-time illusion underwent a mysterious and unpredictable change. After a while, the flow of time in the space-time illusion had been accelerated to more than 365 times of the primordial world. The size had also increased to a radius of 50 million kilometers. It was already like a minor kiliocosm. Unfortunately, this is the limit, but it's enough. Luo Fan raised his hand and waved gently, and the endless phenomenon dissipated. He sighed in his heart and took a step forward. Soon, he arrived above the liquefied, chaotic primordial chi sea at the top of Buzhou Mountain. With another step, he stepped into the minor kiliocosm inside the void Wuji Palace and appeared on the platform in the middle of the lightning pool. Although he had sped up the flow of time in the space-time illusionary land to the limit so easily, in fact, Luo Fan still had not cultivated properly since attaining the Tai Tao fruit. Until now, he had not fully unleashed the power of the primordial unity Tao fruit. The change of time and space, the refinement of magic treasures, and the power of words were all innate magical powers that came with the primordial unity Tao fruit. Luo Fan sat cross-legged, and a mysterious cultivation method that contained endless mysteries gradually appeared in his mind. It was the left and right parts of the Pangu chaotic heavenly pupil. This cultivation method was extremely mysterious and complicated. With Luo Fan's previous golden immortal cultivation realm, he had only cultivated the first of the 4 realms of this cultivation method. Now that he had obtained the primordial unity Tao fruit, he should be able to cultivate the second realm. After carefully comprehending this cultivation method, the mysterious primordial unity Tao fruit in his body had a magic power flow out, circling a mysterious path in his meridians. It seemed to be very slow, but also very fast. At the same time, his mind and will guarded the cultivation method recorded in the Pangu chaotic heavenly pupil, and gradually sank into some mysterious and indescribable state of Tao. With this change, the spirit space began to change. In the ocean of liquefied chaotic energy that had been restored for an unknown period of time, countless amounts of liquefied chaotic energy were absorbed by the Wuji Void Palace. Through the spirit space, they fell from the sky of the spirit space and directly enveloped Luo Fan's body. Bit by bit, they seeped into his body and were constantly broken apart. Through the magic power units, they were transformed into some mysterious and unpredictable power, constantly accumulating and surging, gradually gathering towards Luo Fan's eyes. The human body was a heaven and an earth, a universe, a world. Inside Luo Fan's body, his eyes emitted a dazzling golden and silver light, illuminating every inch of his body. It was like the sun and the moon hanging high in the sky. The mysterious energy transformed by the magic power was like nourishment for the sun and the moon, constantly pouring into the sun and the moon hanging high in the sky. During this process, the sun and the moon hanging high in the sky gradually underwent a subtle and mysterious change. Time flew. Cultivation was timeless. In the blink of an eye, 10,000 years had passed. During these 10,000 years, the gray light beam between the sky and the earth of the spirit space had always existed. Endless chaotic energy was constantly pouring into Luo Fan's body from outside the Wuji Void Palace through this light beam. During these 10,000 years, Luo Fan had been cultivating the Pangu Chaotic Heavenly Pupil. The Pangu Chaotic Heavenly Pupil was a mysterious cultivation method deduced from the sun and the moon of the untainted land by the earthly immortal heavenly escape formation. Its power was endless, and the energy it needed to consume had reached an incalculable level. For the past 10,000 years, the chaotic energy that had been constantly absorbed from outside the Wuji Palace had been used to power this cultivation technique, but it was barely enough. Not even a single strand of energy had been released from it. On this day, Luo Fan, who had been sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed for 10,000 years, was suddenly shocked. The gray light beam that fell from the sky suddenly increased by more than 100 times. In the blink of an eye, it had become like a sky wall. The chaotic energy that was pouring in from the outside also increased by more than 100 times. Chapter 322. Reforging the world with the true pupils of sun and moon, these two black hole-like eyes were never satisfied. No matter how much primal chaos Yuan Qi poured into them, they were unable to stir up any change. Those black holes were still black holes, and their ability to suck primal chaos Yuan Qi was still as terrifying as ever. It seemed like only a moment had passed, but it also seemed like thousands of years had passed. All of a sudden, the two black holes seemed to be saturated. Although there was an endless amount of chaotic spiritual energy surging out, there was no more chaotic spiritual energy that could enter the two black, hole-like eyes. In an instant, a dazzling golden light and silver light suddenly burst out from the two black, hole-like eyes. Among them, the golden light was warm and dazzling, emitting endless light and heat. The silver light was clear and cold, emitting endless chilly air. The two intertwined, like the extreme yin and yang intertwining, repelling and attracting each other, evolving endless yin and yang, the mystery of the great Tao. The golden light and the silver light were extremely mysterious. Under their illumination, the void distorted slightly, and there seemed to be endless lines and patterns appearing. After a long while, the golden and silver light gradually dissipated. Those two eyes also became normal, and no trace of abnormality could be seen. However, the boundless primal chaos Yuan Qi that surged over from the surroundings could no longer approach these two eyes. Every time the primal chaos Yuan Qi reached a certain range around these two eyes, it would naturally be repelled by a mysterious, invisible force. When Luo Fan saw this, his heart instantly surged with enlightenment. He had already cultivated the Pangu chaotic heavenly pupils to the peak of his current realm. If his cultivation realm did not improve by much, it would be difficult for this pair of eyes to improve. With a slight thought, he dispersed the endless chaotic spiritual energy that the Wuji Void Palace had absorbed. The huge gray light pillar that descended from the sky instantly dissipated, turning into countless small gray spots that scattered in all directions, like raindrops covering the world. At the same time, the limitless Void Palace instantly stopped absorbing the liquefied primordial Qi ocean at the top of Buzhou Mountain. The liquefied primordial Qi ocean returned to normal. Luo Fan's eyelids trembled slightly, and he suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were overflowing with color, and the gold and silver light had completely dyed his pupils. However, these two kinds of light were already rather gentle, as if they were natural colors. As the pair of strange eyes moved, Luo Fan suddenly felt as if he had seen through time and space. He understood the past and the future as far as his eyes could see, and he even had the thought of changing the past and the future. So this is the second stage of the Pangu chaotic heavenly pupil, the true pupil of sun and moon. Luo Fan mumbled to himself with a confident smile on his face. At this moment, what he saw within his eyes were countless profundities that he'd comprehended in the past, yet was unable to truly see clearly. The boundless truth of the Grand Tao was reflected within his eyes, and it allowed him to clearly understand the various profound Tao arts and supreme divine abilities he'd comprehended in the past, as if he was looking at the lines on his palm. Suddenly, Luo Fan had a deeper understanding of the cultivation realm of the Pangu chaotic heavenly pupil than he had ever had before. The Pangu chaotic heavenly pupil was extremely profound. Although it contained the profound mysteries of the sun and moon of the primitive world, it appeared in the world through Luo Fan's hands after all. Naturally, there was not much difference between it and Luo Fan's great Tao of Tao fruit. Therefore, this supreme technique was also divided into 4 stages. In the first stage, both pupils were cultivated separately, and finally, they would be cultivated into the great sun golden pupil and the bright moon silver pupil. This realm could only be cultivated by cultivators who had attained the earth immortal Tao fruit. At the second stage, although the performance of the pupils was quite different and the golden and silver lights were even more obvious, their essence had already merged into one, and they were both the true pupil of sun and moon. It was just at the left I was biased towards the sun, and the right I was biased towards the moon. This realm could only be cultivated by a cultivator who had attained the grand unity Tao fruit. At the third stage, no matter if it was the performance or essence of the pupils, they would be merged into one, and only cultivators who had attained the grand unity Tao fruit could cultivate it. As for the specific form of performance and what kind of power it possessed, it was not something that Luo Fan, who had just attained the grand unity Tao fruit, knew. The Tao fruit had to be attained, and without attaining the Tao fruit, it was impossible to imagine what kind of power and divine ability one would possess after attaining the Tao fruit. This cultivation technique could only be cultivated by those who had attained different Tao fruits, and it was naturally impossible to know if one's cultivation realm had not reached that level. As for the fourth stage, it was the final cultivation of the Pangu chaotic heavenly pupil. Without attaining primordial chaos, it was impossible to comprehend it. To the current Luo Fan, it was profound and unfathomable, and he could not see any traces of it even if he looked into the distance. There was no need to say anything. With a light stride, Luo Fan's figure had already left the infinite palace of the void and arrived above the chaotic energy ocean at the top of Buzhou Mountain. Looking down, the entire world had already undergone a tremendous change in his eyes. In the void, there was endless information being revealed. Every bit and every space seemed to contain the boundless mysteries of the great Tao of heaven and earth. The principles that were revealed were much deeper than what he had seen with his eyes after attaining the grand unity Tao fruit. Such a change was indescribably profound and profound. If one were to use the comprehension ability of an ordinary person to describe it, it would be like everything in front of one's eyes had changed from a 2-dimensional scene to a 3-dimensional scene. Such a change could only be understood and could not be described. Luo Fan raised his hand and gently poked at a special place that his eyes could see. In an instant, the wind blew and the clouds moved. Endless complex and unimaginable changes occurred in the depths of the void. In the process of this change, billions of divine thunders of destruction suddenly burst out from that void. The area within a radius of 100 miles was completely enveloped by billions of divine thunders of destruction. The billions of divine thunders of destruction contained infinite power. Under its shroud, the chaotic energy within a radius of 100 miles was instantly turned into nothingness. Along with the billions of divine thunders of destruction, it disappeared from the untainted land as if it had never appeared. Luo Fan's expression did not change, but a trace of surprise flashed in his mind. It was very easy for Luo Fan to destroy and turn the chaotic energy within a radius of 100 miles into nothingness, but it was not to such an extent. The untainted land actually hides so many mysteries. It seems that I still have a long way to go. Luo Fan sighed. With a wave of his hand, the slightly abnormal space that he had poked instantly returned to normal, as if nothing abnormal had ever happened. After the chaotic energy within a radius of 100 miles was used up, the surrounding liquefied chaotic energy quickly rushed in, and in the blink of an eye, the area was filled up again. Master, you're finally back. At this moment, A soft cry entered Luo Fan's ears. Luo Fan thought about it and turned his eyes. He had already discovered who the person who spoke was. So it's you. It's already been tens of thousands of years. It seems that you've gained quite a bit. You've actually improved so much. Luo Fan smiled and waved his hand. A woman floated up from the depths of the liquefied, chaotic energy ocean and arrived in front of him. This woman was around 14 or 15 years old. She was extremely beautiful with a hint of innocence. However, she was a rare beauty. Impressively, she was the Xuanji boy who had grown up a lot. Wah, wah. Master, you've gone too far, leaving me here alone for so many years. The Xuanji boy looked at Luo Fan and suddenly burst into tears, completely destroying his originally beautiful image. Luo Fan couldn't help but smile bitterly. He had originally thought that since the Xuanji boy had improved so much, there should be some changes, but he didn't expect that there wouldn't be the slightest change. All right. Although you still haven't reached the peak of the immortal Tao treasure, you have reached a certain bottleneck. There is no need for you to continue staying here and let the primal chaos chi temper you. In the future, follow me, Luo Fan said with a smile. Great! From now on, Xuanji can follow by Master's side. The Xuanji boy instantly smiled through his tears. Come up. Luo Fan smiled and waved her hand. The Xuanji boy nodded his head forcefully. His body shook, and he turned into a ray of dark green light that shot towards Luo Fan. In the blink of an eye, he had already entered the long robe on the surface of Luo Fan's body. At this moment, the dark green robe suddenly burst out with billions of rays of light. The body of the robe quickly squirmed, disintegrated, and reassembled. On its surface, there were billions of three-dimensional talismans flashing. In the blink of an eye, the robe had returned to its original form. However, the aura emitted by the robe was 100 times stronger than before. The Xuanji boy had also grown a lot in this instant. He looked like he was already 18 or 19 years old. So comfortable. The aura coming from Master's body is really comfortable. The Xuanji boy moaned in Luo Fan's mind. In that instant, the Xuanji boy had obtained the help of the Tai E Dao fruit that Luo Fan had obtained. His realm had suddenly risen, and his power had instantly risen to the peak of the immortal Tao treasure. He only needed some kind of unfathomable opportunity to break through the immortal Tao treasure and become a Tai E profound treasure. So that's how it is. Looks like I need to refine all the magic treasures again. Luo Fan did not expect such a change and could not help but be secretly delighted. Suddenly, his heart moved. He took a step forward and stepped into the small kiliocosm inside the Wuji Palace, arriving on the platform at the center of the lightning pool. At this time, outside the lightning pool, there was a young man with a golden circle of light behind his head standing there. It was Lei Jiuxiao. Greetings, Master. Disciple has already refined his soul into a golden body. I've come to report. Luo Fan's appearance was not concealed at all. Lei Jiuxiao instantly noticed Luo Fan's arrival and bowed slightly. At this moment, Luo Fan had already cultivated the true pupils of sun and moon. With a turn of his eyes, he saw through every inch of Lei Jiuxiao's position, even reaching deep into Lei Jiuxiao's sea of consciousness and soul. Not bad. Your golden body is already quite solid. Your current cultivation should be comparable to the peak of the Return of Divinity stage, but it is still inferior to cultivators of the Tribulation Passing stage. In the future, you must cultivate hard in order to break through as soon as possible. Luo Fan raised his hand and beckoned. Lei Jiuxiao came in front of him and smiled at the same time. Lei Jiuxiao was not surprised by such a change. He only bowed and said, "Disciple understands. It's just that Disciple has encountered many difficulties in the past 10,000 years. Master, please enlighten me." Luo Fan had already seen through everything about Lei Jiuxiao. He naturally knew the difficulties that Lei Jiuxiao had encountered. He was not surprised when he heard those words. He directly said, "As a teacher, I impart knowledge and dispel doubts. Since I'm your teacher, I naturally should dispel your doubts. Just tell me, Lei Jiuxiao bowed again and explained the various difficulties that he had encountered in his cultivation. These problems were obviously carefully selected by him. They were the problems that remained after countless fruitless thoughts. However, they were quite profound. Luo Fan listened with a smile and secretly praised Lei Jiuxiao for being a talent in seeking the Tao. After 3 days, Luo Fan explained all the problems that Lei Jiuxiao had encountered in the most concise way. After receiving Luo Fan's lecture for 3 days, Lei Jiuxiao's eyes showed a look of enlightenment. It seemed that his cultivation realm had greatly improved. He looked rather happy. After thousands of years, the great tribulation of heaven and earth will occur in the primordial world. If you don't abandon the past, you'll have already become one with the minor kiliacosm, because you have reincarnated for too long in this minor kiliacosm. Perhaps you can maintain transcendence in this minor kiliacosm and not enter the great tribulation. However, you have already abandoned the past and been incorporated into your own system by the great Tao of the primordial world. You can't escape this great tribulation. It's best to cultivate well in these few thousand years so that I can attain the Tao as soon as possible. Luo Fan looked at Lei Jiuxiao and sighed. Although that's the case, disciple doesn't regret it. The great tribulation might be dangerous, but it's also an opportunity to transcend. Without this tribulation, how could disciple become master's disciple? How could disciple cultivate to this level? Lei Jiuxiao didn't care at all. Luo Fan laughed when he heard that. Since you have such thoughts, it's not in vain that I've spent so much effort on you. If these few thousand years were in the minor thousand world, it would be hundreds of thousands of years. When I refine the world, it might be even longer, allowing you to break through. Lei Jiuxiao's eyes lit up when he heard that, and he pleaded, Master, when you refine the world, I wonder if disciple can watch from the side. Luo Fan was slightly taken aback. He pondered for a moment and shook his head. You want to use the scene of my refining world to comprehend the Tao. This is an excellent idea, but it's a pity that your current cultivation is too low. Although the refining world contains the supreme Tao, it's too profound. It'll only bring harm to you if you see it, but I can't harm you. This disciple understands. Lei Jiuxiao seemed rather unwilling, but he believed Luo Fan's words. All right, you can go and cultivate now. Although I can't let you see the scene of the refining world with your own eyes, I'll grant you extraordinary perception. You might be able to comprehend the Tao that suits you from the space-time changes of this minor thousand world, Luo Fan said. With that, he raised his hand and pointed. The entire minor thousand world underwent a slight change. In an instant, Lei Jiuxiao felt that his hearing and perception had increased by hundreds or thousands of times. The world that seemed to be shrouded in a layer of fog in the past instantly became extremely clear. Thank you, Master. Lei Jiuxiao was overjoyed and bowed. Luo Fan smiled. He raised his hand and waved. Lei Jiuxiao was teleported to his secret cultivation room. At the same time, he left a sentence in Lei Jiuxiao's ear. Cultivate well. Although your aptitude is not as good as the innate gods, your temperament is enough to close the gap. Disciple understands. Lei Jiuxiao bowed. After sending Lei Jiuxiao away, Luo Fan lifted his foot and took a light step out of the minor thousand world. He arrived at the palace-like medium thousand world. This medium thousand world was forcibly refined by Luo Fan when his cultivation was insufficient. Its structure was not complete, and it was very simple. In Luo Fan's eyes, there were countless places that could be repaired. Sure enough, I need to attain Tai Dao fruit to be able to open up a medium thousand world. Luo Fan's mind was filled with emotions. He raised his hand and waved. The limitless boy appeared in front of him. At this time, the limitless boy looked 17 or 18 years old. He was more like a youth than a boy. Greetings, Master. The limitless boy was expressionless as he bowed. Luo Fan nodded and said, Follow me to refine your body. Thank you for your promotion, Master. The limitless boy's eyes flashed, and he said, although he did not have self-consciousness, he knew the significance of Luo Fan's refine of his body. His spiritual intelligence was shocked, and he was pleasantly surprised. Luo Fan did not care. His body shook, and his body exuded a profound aura like the great Tao. It contained infinite mysteries. The aura exuded from his body continued to rise. In the blink of an eye, it had rushed out of the medium thousand world. It seeped out of the void Wuji Palace and enveloped the top of Buzhou Mountain for 1,000 miles. As he exuded an aura, a faint sound of the great Tao resounded in the void. Infinite rays of light suddenly appeared around his body. The entire medium thousand world began to shake more and more violently during this process. After a while, the entire medium thousand world collapsed. Between the endless earth, water, fire, and wind surged, there was an infinite destructive force rushing toward Luo Fan, the limitless boy, and the portal to the small thousand world in front of them. It wanted to destroy everything. At this moment, the limitless boy suddenly flew up. His body shook and turned into an invisible force. It suddenly suppressed the area within a radius of 10 zhong, protecting Luo Fan and the door that led to the minor thousand world. No matter how the surrounding earth, water, fire, and wind attacked, they could not invade this area. They could not affect Luo Fan and the portal. Luo Fan had expected this change, so he did not care. At this moment, the mysterious and unpredictable incantation that he got from Hongjun to open up the medium-class world flashed through his mind. Along with the incantation, the Tai Tao fruit in his dantian, which was like a world of its own, separated a stream of Dharma power. It flowed in his meridians according to some mysterious path, constantly changing and changing. The magical power units that were already changing endlessly without a trace of stagnation changed even faster. In the blink of an eye, it had already transformed into numerous uncanny and unfathomable energy lines that were like sharp blades that could cut through the void. These energy lines contained the endless truths of the world and the mysteries of the great Tao. Not only did they contain the mysteries of the incantation, but they also contained the various truths of the great Tao that he had comprehended from the space of the primordial world after attaining the primordial unity fruit of Tao. Chapter 3:23. Evolving the world in an attempt to plunder the stars, these innumerable lines, which contained inexplicable mysteries and were almost inexhaustible in power, circulated in Luo Fan's body for a few rounds before suddenly rushing out from the countless acupuncture points on the surface of his body. Like the hundreds of millions of tentacles of some mysterious monster, they rushed towards the surging infinite earth, water, fire, and wind. In the blink of an eye, they broke through the infinite earth, water, fire, and wind and rushed into them. Earth, water, fire, and wind were the essence energies of the world. Although they were not chaos, they possessed the power to transform and destroy all forms of energy. Even chaos Yuan Qi would be slowly whittled down when encountering the essence energies of the earth, water, fire, and wind. In the end, it would be assimilated. However, in the face of the endless, seemingly non-existent threads that had rushed out of Luo Fan's body, the origin energy of the heavens and earth was like a mouse that had seen a cat. It instantly became extremely tame and was easily caught by the threads. Then it was constantly entangled and quickly transformed. In the blink of an eye, it fused with each other and constantly evolved. Gradually, it turned into billions of mysterious lines that contained endless mysteries and profound trajectories, turning into an existence similar to the void. The moment these lines, which contained endless mysteries, were born, the four world essences of earth, water, fire, and wind gradually separated and disappeared. There seemed to be some kind of indescribable existence that was gradually being born. In the outside world, this was a scene where clear and turbid air had suddenly appeared. At the same time, clear air had risen and turbid air had sunk, gradually forming an increasingly vast and profound world. The gold and silver light in Luo Fan's true eyes of sun and moon flickered rapidly. Endless information flowed into his mind through his eyes and into the world in his sea of consciousness. Everything that Luo Fan saw in his eyes was not as shallow as the rising of the clear air and the sinking of the turbid air, nor was it as simple as the endless mysterious lines and mysterious trajectories. Instead, he went deeper and saw more things. At this moment, in Luo Fan's eyes, there was a complete world constantly evolving. Heaven and earth were created from nothingness. In the process, it grew and evolved continuously. From the beginning to the peak, it slowly declined, gradually collapsed, and was destroyed. It was born again, evolved, grew, declined again, and was destroyed again. It formed one cycle after another of life and death, illusion and destruction. All of these scenes were impressively the entire world that he was about to open. This was the entire process of the dimensional realm that was growing and being destroyed in front of Luo Fan. The power of the true eyes of sun and moon didn't reach the point of being able to see through the life and death of a world. But the dimensional realm in front of Luo Fan was different. This dimensional realm was created by Luo Fan. Thus, it had an incomparably close connection with Luo Fan. When Luo Fan used the true eyes of sun and moon on this dimensional realm, its might was increased by tens of thousands of times. It was because of this that his eyes were able to see through the life and death process of this dimensional realm. In Luo Fan's spiritual power, endless information had been flowing across his mind all the time. In his spiritual space, the Pan-Gu's bone, which was transformed from his soul, stood upright, with a pair of deep eye sockets sparkling with a golden light and a silver light. Along with this change, the entire world in his sea of consciousness was also constantly twisting and changing. An immeasurably vast light and shadow had been projecting into his spiritual space, showing the entire process of a world from birth to destruction. According to this light and shadow, and this information, Luo Fan's power had been slightly changing inside his body. Those mysterious threads that pierced through the boundless earth, water, fire, and wind were also constantly changing, and adjusting at any time. A slight difference could lead to a huge difference. As the old saying went, great wisdom could be found in this world. Along with the adjustment of those mysterious threads, the way in which the clear and turbid powers were generated changed slightly, and so did the rising speed and direction. During this process, a complete world was projected in his sea of consciousness. The process of the world's birth, growth, and destruction was also constantly changing. Time flew slowly. Ji hadn't know how long it had been, but it also felt like billions of years had passed. Suddenly, a faint smile appeared on Luo Fan's face. Although the heaven and earth light and shadow projected from his sea of consciousness still had a complete process of growth and destruction in his sea of consciousness, the time it had experienced had been extended to an unimaginable level. It had been billions of yuanwees. This period of time couldn't be compared with the time that existed in the prehistorical world, but it was still extremely rare and terrifying. At this moment, Luo Fan thought of something. In the blink of an eye, countless phenomena appeared. Multicolored light, strange fragrance, heavenly flowers, the sound of the great Tao, golden lotuses, and rays of light were only part of the problem. Apart from that, the shadows of countless living beings kept changing and circled around Luo Fan. In a daze, a mysterious sound that seemed to have shaken the entire primordial world suddenly sounded. Along with the sound, a strange vibration spread out. An endless world seemed to have appeared out of thin air and suddenly appeared around Luo Fan. This world was infinitely vast, infinitely lofty. The sky above was 90,000 kilometers high, and the ground below was infinitely vast. There were endless strange terrains, mountains, rivers, and vegetation. It could be said that the entire world looked like the primordial world, except that the strength of the space was not comparable to the primordial world, and the mysteries contained in the space were not comparable to the primordial world. Even the void was filled with the extremely thin, but intrinsically high-grade chaos essence energy. In the sky above the world, there was an endless starry sky that emitted endless starlight, illuminating the world. The bright moon emitted an endless amount of lunar essence, while the dazzling sun emitted an endless amount of great sun essence. True sun fire. It could be said that the entire starry sky was the endless starry sky of the primordial world. This world was the medium-class world that Luo Fan had created. The starry sky above his head was the projection of the endless starry sky. It was almost endless and contained everything. The essence of the stars that shone down was also transferred over through some mysterious and unbelievable method. The essence of the stars in the endless starry sky. Luo Fan was currently at the top of a mountain that was tens of thousands of miles high. This mountain was located in the center of the entire world. The density of the chaos essence energy contained at the peak of the mountain was the highest in the entire world. Although it could not be compared to the peak of Buzhou Mountain, it was much denser than most of the chaos essence energy in the primordial world. Luo Fan stood there, looking down at this piece of heaven and earth. Suddenly, his heart gave birth to endless confidence. There was also a kind of indescribable joy. After attaining the primordial unity Dao fruit, the power he possessed was truly shocking to even himself. If the endless chaos essence energy in this world was combined, it would be almost 1,000,000 times stronger than the power of his whole body. However, the creation of the whole world only consumed a small part of his magic power. At this time, the magic power in Luo Fan's body had shrunk by half. Although this consumption was extremely terrifying in absolute terms, compared to the vast world, this consumption was not worth mentioning. Crack, a light sound, like the shattering of the world, suddenly came into Luo Fan's ears. Luo Fan thought of something. The true eyes of sun and moon turned, and he saw through this medium-class world and the entire Void Wuji Palace. In an instant, he understood the source of the rustling sound. It turns out that the main body of the Void Wuji Palace could not withstand this medium-class world. This makes sense. Such a thought flashed in Luo Fan's mind. The main body of the Void Wuji Palace was formed from a piece of earth essence that Luo Fan had randomly chosen. Although it had been strengthened by Luo Fan, and its quality had been improved to an unimaginable level, and after being tempered by the chaos essence energy for tens of thousands of years, it had already undergone an incredible transformation. Moreover, there was also the Earth Thunder Pool, which had undergone a qualitative transformation. However, the poor quality of the material could not be changed. At this time, this vast and complete medium-class world was created by Luo Fan in the Void Wuji Palace. Finally, the Earth essence could not withstand it anymore. In just a moment, 129,600 cracks appeared on the surface of the Void Wuji Palace. If Luo Fan did not make any changes, it would not take long before the Void Wuji Palace was destroyed. After the destruction of the Void Wuji Palace, the medium-class world would lose its support and would be destroyed along with it. At that time, Luo Fan's painstaking efforts would be for naught. Luo Fan was naturally aware of the consequences. Just as he was about to make a move, he discovered that there was an inexplicable fluctuation that he felt. With a thought, his true eyes of sun and moon rotated slightly, and he knew what was going on. It was the limitless boy who had been shrouding him, being affected by the destruction of the main body of the Void Wuji Palace. He was seriously injured, and his power was in a mess. He could no longer maintain his formless form and the power to control the void. He was about to break away from the void. Luo Fan raised his hand and beckoned. The figure of the limitless boy gradually appeared in front of him. The whole process was like billions of dust in the void gradually condensing and piling up, forming the figure of a person in his late teens. The limitless boy appeared, but he looked like he was in extreme pain. He just stood there, unable to move his body. He couldn't even greet Luo Fan. Luo Fan naturally understood the current state of the limitless boy. He knew that the limitless boy's body had already accumulated enough energy for him to undergo a transformation. However, the energy was too fierce and intense. It was not something that the limitless boy's body could withstand. If it were to explode, it would be enough to blast him into pieces. At this moment, his performance was forcefully suppressing the power in his body, preventing it from exploding. Knowing this, he didn't hesitate. He raised his hand and pointed. 1,296 mysterious units containing endless mysteries rushed out and turned into 1,296 unimaginably complex, three-dimensional talismans. They suddenly combined and turned into a ball of light that couldn't be described with color. It directly covered his body. After being covered by this ball of light, the limitless boy's body froze. The painful expression on his face instantly faded a lot. Although he still couldn't move, he felt a lot better. I'll freeze you first. You can come out and cooperate with me to refine your body. I want your body to be able to withstand the pressure of this medium-class world. Luo Fan said. Yes, sir, the Infinity Boy said and closed his eyes. As he closed his eyes, the entire medium-class world seemed to have gained something, but it also seemed to have lost something. The door that stood at the top of the mountain that led to the mini-universe slowly melted at this moment and gradually disappeared. When Luo Fan saw this, he was not surprised. With a thought, he took a step forward and exited the limitless palace. At this moment, the surface of the limitless palace had another 129,600 cracks. It was one step closer to collapse. Luo Fan raised his hand and grasped in the air. A large amount of spiritual power covered the square palace out of thin air. Then he stepped into the air. In the blink of an eye, he had brought the limitless palace into the endless starry sky above. After a few more steps, he came to the place where an incomparably huge star was. This star was in the depths of the endless starry sky. It was probably billions of miles away from the untainted world. Although it wasn't as big as the moon or the sun, it was still vast. Compared to this star, the Earth that Luo Fan was on in his previous life was like an atom. From this, it could be seen how vast this star was. Standing thousands of miles away from this star, Luo Fan stopped, bowed to the void, and said, "Today, I need to borrow half of this star to refine my magic treasure. In the future, I will definitely be able to make up for it. The great Tao can be my witness." As he bowed, the void shook slightly. At the same time, he felt that there was a mysterious existence in the supreme, great Tao that was acting on his divine soul. This kind of mysterious existence was faintly discernible, as if it did not exist. Even if Luo Fan had already attained the Grand Unity Tao fruit, he could only barely sense that there seemed to be something added to his divine soul, but he was unable to find any trace of this thing. Even with his sun-moon true eyes, he was unable to see that mysterious existence. Sensing this, Luo Fan sighed in his heart. He knew that although he had achieved the Tai Tao fruit, compared to the supreme great Tao, he was still insignificant. His path of seeking Tao was still so long that he couldn't see the end. This thought just flashed past. In the blink of an eye, Luo Fan took a step forward and stepped into the boundless star without any obstruction. In the blink of an eye, he had arrived at the planet's central core. In that short moment of delay, another 129,600 cracks had appeared on the surface of the limitless void palace. The endless starry sky contained billions of stars. These stars were born from the untainted land. They contained infinite star essence and infinite power. At the same time, they also contained some mysterious and profound secrets that were connected to the entire untainted land. The Wuji Void Palace contained a medium-class world and a small-class world. Moreover, the medium-class world and small-class world were incomparably complete. They could change time and space and speed up the passage of time. One could imagine how great the pressure was. How could ordinary materials withstand the pressure of these two worlds? If there was enough time, Luo Fan could easily search around the untainted land and refine it. After thousands or tens of thousands of years, he would be able to refine a material that could withstand the pressure of these two worlds. But at this time, the Wuji Void Palace had reached its limit. If he delayed any longer, it would completely collapse. At that time, both worlds would be destroyed. Luo Fan's efforts over the past tens of millions of years would be destroyed. But he couldn't take his time to find and refine the material. It was precisely because of this that Luo Fan had no choice but to target this star. After all, this boundless star was not the sun and moon formed by Panga's eyes. Although it contained infinite star essence and infinite power, its core was only a mysterious ball of spiritual light. It was not as mysterious as the sun and moon. This mysterious ball of spiritual light was 1,000 miles in diameter. In the center of the star, it held up a spherical void with a diameter of 10,000 miles. There was endless pressure here. If Luo Fan had not attained the Tai Dao fruit, even if he cultivated to the peak of the golden immortal realm, he would definitely be crushed by this huge pressure. Even his divine soul would not be able to escape. Thus, everything would be for naught. When Luo Fan arrived here, he used the true pupils of sun and moon and saw countless things clearly. The true pupils of sun and moon was the second layer of the Pangu chaotic heavenly pupils. Its power was unimaginably strong. For the stars in the endless starry sky, it had a wonderful effect. Under these eyes, the truth that Luo Fan would have to carefully comprehend for countless years to comprehend was seen through by him with a single glance. Suddenly, he understood the rules of operation of this star. He understood how this mysterious ball of spiritual light gave birth to this huge star and how it combined with billions of other stars to work together on the untainted land. After understanding all these mysteries, Luo Fan understood how to add this mysterious ball of spiritual light to the Wuji Void Palace. At the same time, he also knew how to make the star remain after a part of this mysterious ball of spiritual light was lost. With a thought, he raised his hand and waved. The Tai Dao fruit in his body separated a strand of magic power that contained endless power. It danced in the void in front of him and changed rapidly. As this magic power danced and changed, endless sounds of the great Tao spread out from it. This sound seemed endless, as if it was describing some mysterious and complicated truth of the great Tao. It also seemed to be conveying some indescribable secret of the world. In this incredible sound of the great Tao, the strand of magic power slowly condensed into a mysterious palm that was 3,000 miles in size. Like the hand of heaven, it gently reached towards the mysterious ball of spiritual light in front of it. During this process, the ball of spirit light seemed to know what kind of fate it would suffer. It trembled slightly, causing the pressure inside the star core to change as well. It fluctuated between big and small, strong and weak. The mysterious palm, which was like the hand of the heavens, easily cut into the spiritual light. Chapter 324. 3000 Worlds Chapter 364. Refining treasures with stars as half of the spiritual light separated from the spiritual light. The pressure in the 10,000-kilometer diameter sphere suddenly increased by more than 100 times. Suddenly, such a powerful white and tender pressure made Luo Fan, who had already attained Dao fruit and was constantly being protected by the void of heaven and earth, have a slight change in expression. Obviously, he also felt the impact of this strange force. At this time, Luo Fan naturally did not have the energy to resist this strange force. Therefore, with just a slight thought, the dark green robe on the surface of his body, which had already undergone a great transformation from a magic treasure to a peak immortal treasure, shook. Suddenly, it emitted a faint dark cyan brilliance that directly enveloped Luo Fan's body. In an instant, it isolated the boundless power that existed in the surrounding void. The Star Pearl robe was naturally much weaker than Luo Fan, who had attained Dao fruit of grand unity. After all, there was a huge difference between an immortal treasure and a primordial unity treasure. However, there was a specialization in every field. This magic treasure was specially refined by Luo Fan to protect himself, so it naturally had an excellent performance in terms of protection. Even though its realm was much lower than Luo Fan's, it could do what Luo Fan had to spend a lot of effort to do, repel the incomparably huge pressure in the surroundings. Luo Fan was naturally not the slightest bit surprised by this. With a thought, he had already suppressed more than half of the mysterious spiritual light. Like the hand of heaven, the palm formed by his magic power instantly produced a great force that could destroy the world, acting on the half of the spiritual light within a 500-kilometer radius. Under such a terrifying and astonishing force, in just an instant, the originally solid spiritual light shrank by more than 1,000,000 times. From a ball that was originally hundreds of kilometers in size, it was compressed to the size of a basketball in the blink of an eye. Furthermore, this basketball-sized ball of spiritual light was condensed and pure. It was as translucent as a diamond, as if it was real. Luo Fan looked at it silently. He knew that it contained boundless power, and it even contained some profound and unfathomable supreme truth of the world and the primordial world. If it was comprehended, ordinary living beings could even rely on it to attain the peak of the golden immortal realm. The power contained in this object had reached an unimaginable level. It was tens of millions of times more powerful than the magic power he possessed. If it erupted, not only would his dimensional realm be unable to withstand it, but even the void of tens of millions of miles of the great wilderness world would be twisted to pieces. However, Luo Fan could not and did not dare to absorb such a powerful force, because this power contained the boundless will of the world. There were countless stars in the endless starry sky, and each of these stars was an inseparable part of the endless starry sky of the untainted land. Every star was the focus of the supreme great Tao of the untainted land. If Luo Fan wanted to use it to refine a magic treasure, it was already an act that went against the great Tao. Although he would obtain great benefits, he would also have to bear great karma. After obtaining this object, he would still have to spend a lot of effort to replenish the power of this star in the future before he could escape. If he absorbed this power and took it for himself, the result would be even more serious than using it to refine a magic treasure. At that time, his body and his soul would form some kind of inseparable connection with this star. In the future, even if he tried his best to replenish the power of this star, that connection would not be able to be separated. In the end, this connection might be a huge obstacle for Luo Fan to transcend the untainted land and wander between the chaos. Under such circumstances, absorbing this boundless power was only a small supplement for Luo Fan. The Tai Dao fruit was extremely mysterious, but one had to comprehend the great Tao of the heavens and earth and comprehend the mysteries of nature in order to improve. Pure replenishment of power had an effect on one's cultivation, but not much. Even if absorbing this power allowed Luo Fan to directly attain the Zenith Heaven Tao fruit, Luo Fan did not dare to absorb it. The moment the half of the spiritual light shrank, the heavenly hand also shrank. At this moment, it had become an existence slightly larger than Luo Fan's body. This existence, which had been compressed to the size of a basketball, was like a grain of sand before the spiritual light. Luo Fan sighed, and a thought flashed through his mind. I don't know if what I'm doing today is right or wrong. As he sighed, he raised his hand and waved it. A profound and unfathomable trajectory that contained the boundless mysteries of the world flowed out of his hand. Following this trajectory, boundless essence of the stars condensed, compressed, and quickly piled up in front of the basketball-sized spiritual light. This star contained boundless mysteries, and it had some kind of mysterious and unbelievable connection with the untainted land and the boundless starry sky. But it was precisely because of this that its various characteristics were fixed. Thus, it could not be compressed to the limit, and could only maintain this incomparably huge state. Astral essence Qi was a type of energy that was extremely mysterious. Compared to the chaotic energy, although its performance was different, it was equally mysterious and unbelievable. Under the control of Luo Fan, this inexhaustible star essence gradually underwent some kind of extremely complicated transformation under the effect of a mysterious and powerful force that was generated from the surrounding void. From a gas, it turned into a liquid, then into a solid, then into a gas that was different from the star essence chi, and then into a liquid again, from a gas to a solid, and from a solid to a gas. This cycle repeated for a total of 81 times. At this moment, under the control of the palm that Luo Fan released, the spiritual light that was like the hand of heaven had grown into a sphere with a diameter of 1,000 feet. Other than the basketball-sized spiritual light in the center of this sphere, everything outside was some kind of crystal clear solid. This kind of solid was mysterious and unfathomable. It was too wonderful for words, and it was extremely tough. Even if it was thrown into a world that was about to be destroyed, it could still remain for a long time. It was also extremely heavy. Just a small ball the size of a thumb weighed over 1 billion tons. If it wasn't for the fact that Luo Fan's magic power was mysterious and the palm that he condensed contained some kind of unfathomable mystery of the void, he would not have been able to control this sphere with a diameter of 1,000 feet. After the spiritual light in the center of this huge star lost half of its body, it was greatly damaged, and its light became a lot dimmer. At the same time, the space that was originally tens of thousands of miles in diameter also gradually shrank due to the damage of this spiritual light. Seeing this, a thought flashed through Luo Fan's mind. If this star is destroyed because of this, it won't be good. Let me remedy it. With this thought, he naturally wouldn't stop. He raised his hand, and a magic power rushed out of his hand. It circled in the void and quickly changed. In the blink of an eye, it turned into countless, almost undetectable threads. Even if there were tens of thousands of layers in the void, it would only slightly blur one's vision. As soon as these threads were formed, they quickly shuttled back and forth, quickly intertwined, and quickly combined. In the blink of an eye, they turned into countless mysterious and extremely complicated three-dimensional talismans. These three-dimensional talismans were extremely mysterious and contained some kind of power that could command a world. As soon as they were formed, the void gave birth to endless changes. In an instant, endless, mysterious, and incredible power appeared out of thin air and added to the countless three-dimensional talismans. Hundreds of millions of rays of light suddenly burst out from these countless three-dimensional talismans. The light was dazzling and brilliant, and it intertwined with the light emitted by the spiritual light that acted as the star's core. They fused together and formed a very gentle and very pleasing light. Under this gentle and pleasing light, the countless three-dimensional talismans finally revealed their true appearance. In this spherical void with a diameter of 10,000 kilometers, there were countless three-dimensional talismans that were emitting all kinds of mysterious lights. They were shuttling back and forth like living creatures, wandering in groups. They seemed to be extremely chaotic, but at the same time, they seemed to be swimming according to some kind of mysterious and incredible rules. The endless three-dimensional talismans were like countless words, constantly rearranging and reorganizing. They seemed to be evolving some kind of incredible mystery of the great Tao of heaven and earth. It seemed to be telling some kind of mysterious truth. If a true immortal cultivator came here and saw this scene, he would probably instantly comprehend the bottleneck between the true immortal and golden immortal realms, and instantly obtain an incomparably huge breakthrough. Luo Fan's eyes turned, and he had already seen through the operating rules of these infinite three-dimensional talismans. He knew that the appearance of these three-dimensional talismans could certainly supplement the huge pressure that the spiritual light emitted, and it could maintain the stability of this spherical void with a diameter of tens of thousands of miles. In this way, this terrifyingly huge star wouldn't be destroyed because it lost half of the star's core. Seeing this, he was finally relieved. He took a step forward, and in the blink of an eye, he had already left this star and arrived in the infinite void outside. The whole process just now seemed to be quite long, but in fact it was only a moment. At this moment, the surface of the everlasting void palace only had 129,600 cracks, but it still didn't collapse. The main material to reforge the everlasting void palace was this sphere in his hand. At this moment, It could be said that all the preparations for Luo Fan to reforge the everlasting Void Palace were completed. However, this didn't mean that Luo Fan was going to reforge the everlasting Void Palace here. After all, the everlasting Void Palace contained a medium-sized world and a small kiliacosm. Refining this treasure would definitely cause these two worlds to change. At that time, the various auras, waves, and powers that it emitted would not be something that the space in the endless starry sky could withstand. Therefore, Luo Fan needed to return to the primordial world to reforge this treasure. Luo Fan's thoughts flashed so fast that they almost surpassed time. Without any hesitation, he took a step forward and crossed the endless space. He passed through the barrier of time and space, entered the primordial world in the depths of the endless starry sky, and arrived at the top of Buzhou Mountain. When he arrived there, Luo Fan pinched his fingers, and the hand of heaven that was formed by his dermic powers exploded with an infinite amount of power. A strange sound that sounded like the destruction of the world suddenly came from the hand of heaven. In an instant, the 1,000-foot-large sphere turned into countless fine, dust-like powder. The spiritual light that had been compressed by Luo Fan into a basketball-sized sphere also dispersed into countless small dots and mixed with the extremely fine powder around it, forming a very incredible existence. At this moment, the cracks on the surface of the everlasting Void Palace finally increased to 129.6 million. When it reached its limit, the entire everlasting Void Palace instantly collapsed. Because it contained a dimensional realm and a minor dimension, the process of its disintegration was directly reduced from a complete state to the tiniest speck of dust, turning it into nothingness. Luo Fan had expected this. At this moment, his heart moved. The pile of powder in the hand of heaven's hand moved and directly mixed with the shattered dust of the everlasting Void Palace. The time for the powder and the dust to mix was just right. At this moment, the dimensional and minor dimensions of the limitless Void Palace seemed to have paused in time and were instantly frozen in place. The pile of powder contained the power of half a star core. The total amount was tens of thousands of times more than the power that Luo Fan possessed. This light contained the inconceivable mysteries of the Great Tao. Under Luo Fan's control, it directly penetrated into the dimensional realm and minor dimension. In the blink of an eye, it had spread to every inch of the void in these two worlds. It directly shuttled back and forth billions of times. When Luo Fan first refined this infinite Void Palace, he used the infinite Void Palace technique. This was one of the countless cultivation methods Luo Fan had comprehended from Pan Gu's primordial spirit. Although it contained endless mysteries and Pan Gu's supreme understanding of the Great Tao, however, due to the limitation of Luo Fan's knowledge, when he used this technique, he couldn't display its full power. Even after he obtained the Primal Chaos Stone and upgraded it into a magic treasure, he still couldn't make up for this fundamental mistake. Because of this, in Luo Fan's view, the structure of this infinite Void Palace was still quite simple. There was still a lot of room for improvement. With a slight change of thought, specks of light flashed in his mind. Within the blink of an eye, the spell of creation, which he obtained from Pan Gu, flashed across his mind. He combined it with all kinds of magic he learned from the scripture of Tao and Fruit of Tao. Instantly, an even more mysterious magic emerged in his mind, which contained all kinds of incredible secrets. This technique was called 3,000 Worlds. Based on the infinite Void Palace technique, this technique contained endless mysteries of creation. After mastering it, one's power would be endless. Creating a world was just a piece of cake. If he used this 3,000 Worlds technique to refine the infinite Void Palace, he would be able to open up 3,000 major kiliacosms. Each major kiliacosm could open up 3,000 major kiliacosms, and each major kiliacosm could open up 3,000 major kiliacosms. However, that was just a concept. Although Luo Fan created this technique, it was only a combination of the infinite Void Palace technique and all the other techniques of creation that he knew. He could create this technique, but it didn't mean that he knew the secret behind it. This technique has a profound meaning. I'm afraid that I'll need to reach the origin realm to cultivate it to its peak. Luo Fan sighed. 3,000 major kiliocosms. Each major kiliocosm had 3,000 major kiliocosms. Each major kiliocosm had 3,000 major kiliocosms. In total, there were 27 billion worlds, 27 billion. Even if this number was placed on other materials, it would still be an incredibly huge number, let alone on a world. Even if Luo Fan opened up a world in a year, it would still take him 27 billion years. Luo Fan's soul was extremely powerful, and his mind was circulating at an extremely fast speed. Such a huge amount of calculations, thoughts, and the creation of cultivation methods were happening in his mind, but the time in the outside world seemed to be passing by in just a second. Luo Fan raised his hand and waved. Infinite power gathered in the void of the untainted world. At the same time, the earthly immortal Tao fruit in his body separated a large amount of magic power, which quickly circulated around his meridians and turned into a mysterious and wonderful path. In the process, it changed into a mysterious force that contained infinite truth. This mysterious force seemed pure, but it contained billions of three-dimensional talismans. Each of these billions of three-dimensional talismans contained the truth of heaven and earth and the mystery of the great Tao that could allow an ordinary living being to reach the Tao. At the same time, the 3,000 worlds mental cultivation method circulated in Luo Fan's mind. With these two, a sound that seemed to split the sky and earth gradually spread out from Luo Fan's body. Although this sound was not very strong, it seemed to hit the void as if it was real. After being hit by this sound, the void within a radius of 10,000 kilometers around Luo Fan's body underwent countless changes. Faintly discernible clouds and mist gradually appeared. The originally incomparably dense primal chaos energy was also completely expelled, infinitely mysterious and unpredictable, as if it was evolving the shape of the great Tao of heaven and earth, appeared in the faintly discernible clouds and mist. At this moment, Luo Fan's hands drew a mysterious path that seemed to envelop the world and slap towards the endless powder and spiritual light fragments that enveloped the Wuji Palace in front of him. The mysterious force that had been nurturing in his body for a long time directly passed through the void and wrapped around the powder. With the appearance of this mysterious force, the sound that seemed to split the sky and earth became even louder and fiercer. And the surrounding clouds that were produced by the surging sound were also tumbling rapidly. The changing clouds and the evolution of the great Tao became faster and more numerous. Chapter 325. Tai descends from the sky that the limitless boy seemed to have completely lost the ability to think and even lost all consciousness. His face was dull, and his eyes seemed to be at a loss. His body was even slightly distorted, as if there was an infinite mystery evolving in his body, and his body would explode at any time. The mysterious energy that Luo Fan emitted was formed by the infinite mystery contained in the 3,000 worlds. With the addition of a large number of spiritual power units from Luo Fan, it had the supreme power to split the world. If Luo Fan was willing, just this mysterious energy was enough to open up a complete mini kiliocosm. If he added some bearable materials, he could even open up a mini kiliocosm. Under the urging of this inconceivably powerful, profound energy, Limitless Boy's mind was pulled by something. He was already completely immersed in the endless truth and the mysteries of heaven and earth. Almost at every moment, he could feel that he understood some kind of great Tao, truth, and some kind of nature of heaven and earth. He knew the truth that he couldn't understand in the past. The Limitless Boy's originally incomplete spiritual consciousness was constantly being urged in such a situation, becoming complete and constantly undergoing some kind of mysterious transformation. Luo Fan's true pupils of sun and moon contained infinite power. Everything he saw with his eyes was naturally much more than what ordinary innate gods could see with their naked eyes. When a Limitless Boy flashed, He directly reflected the entire transformation process of the limitless boy into his mind through the true pupils of sun and moon. He even clearly saw all kinds of great Tao truth and the nature of heaven and earth that the limitless boy comprehended. I see. Seeing all kinds of scenes and mysteries, Luo Fan's heart suddenly surged with an indescribable enlightenment. He instantly understood what kind of process this was, and what kind of mystery was contained in it. In reality, the process that the infinite child experienced was very similar to when Luo Fan attained the primordial unity Tao fruit. Even the various truths of the grand Tao and the essence of the world that the infinite child comprehended were similar to what he had comprehended back then. All of this clearly showed that the limitless boy had already broken through the limits of the immortal Tao and was transforming into a primordial profound treasure. The transformation of a magical treasure was naturally from the inside out, from the inside to the outside. Relatively speaking, the treasure spirit was the deepest core of the magic treasure. The reason why magic treasures were magic treasures was because of the existence of the treasure spirit. Therefore, when the infinite void palace broke through from an immortal treasure to a Tai treasure, the first one to break through was naturally the treasure spirit, the infinite boy. Luo Fan's mind flashed with such enlightenment. With a slight thought, the Xian energy condensed from the 3,000 worlds changed even faster. In an instant, the endless powder had already wrapped around the medium-class world and the minor kiliacosm, condensing together with some mysterious existence in the void, turning into a square palace that was hundreds of feet long. This square palace was huge, simple, and even seemed to be extremely dilapidated. It looked like an ancient building that had experienced the corrosion of hundreds of thousands of years and experienced endless wind and sand. There was not a trace of profoundness, and there was not a trace of aura coming from it. Even the main entrance and the couplets on both sides of the main entrance had become blurry and indistinguishable. Compared to the simple but attractive temperament it had in the past, there was a world of difference. This phrase contained the truth of heaven and earth, and it was also in line with the rules of the primordial world. In the primordial world, the more precious an object was, the more ordinary it looked. When a magic treasure wanted to become a primordial unity treasure, it was like a cultivator wanted to prove the primordial unity Tao fruit. It had to reach an unbelievable level, and that was to reach the standard of such a natural divine object. As such, it would naturally become obscure, ordinary, and inconspicuous. The formation of this square palace was only the first step of the Void Wuji Palace becoming a primordial unity treasure. The change of the Void Wuji Palace was actually just the beginning. In this square palace, an even more intense change was happening. Let's not talk about the Wuji boy, who was greedy for the endless mysteries of the great Tao of heaven and earth. Just the changes in the medium and minor worlds were as intense as the creation of the world. Ordinary creatures in the minor worlds were born stupid, so they naturally did not notice such a great change in the world. However, Lei Jiuxiao, who had been enlightened by Luo Fan and was bestowed with a super strong perception, as well as a very small number of cultivators and high-level warriors, could sense the endless changes occurring in the entire world. So, this is the reforging of the world. Late Jiuxiao, who was in the Apex Hall, could no longer maintain his usual calmness. Shock and fear appeared on his face. The super perception that Luo Fan had bestowed upon him had already come into play. In his senses, the entire minor kiliacosm had been enveloped in a vast, boundless, and mysterious power. This power directly acted on some mysterious and indescribable existence in the void, causing a change in the void that could not be described with words even if one sensed it. As these changes occurred, the entire world seemed to have become countless times more stable and sturdier. The supreme existence that seemed to control everything in the world seemed to have become much stronger as well. In the eyes of people with super perception like Lei Jiuxiao, the changes were like this, but to those without super perception who only relied on their understanding of the minor worlds to discover the changes in the world, it was completely different. In their perception, the world became more profound and unpredictable, and the mysteries of the world it contained became more profound. So Master's abilities have already become so powerful. I wonder when I'll be able to reach this step. Lei Jiuxiao let out a long sigh. After a period of shock and fear, his extraordinary mental fortitude once again came into play, allowing his mind to gradually calm down. After letting out a long sigh, Lei Jiuxiao knew that this was a rare opportunity, so he pushed the perception that Luo Fan had bestowed upon him to the limit. He carefully observed the mysterious changes of this world that were revealed in this spirit kiliocosm, and he comprehended the truth of the great Tao that was revealed within. When Luo Fan saw the square palace take shape in front of him, a faint smile appeared on his face. With a light step, he stepped into the palace in front of him, appearing in a mysterious place inside the palace. This place was extremely strange and even more mysterious. It seemed like there was no space here, but it also seemed like there was a boundless space. Time was extremely distorted, as if it had sped up countless times, and also seemed to have slowed down countless times. This was the mysterious place created by the 3,000 worlds. The limitless boy was here. As for the dimensional realm and minor dimension, they were also located here. The dimensional world was like an oval-shaped embryo that was the color of primal chaos. It was constantly trembling, as if it was evolving some kind of natural law of the universe. And within this chaos, there seemed to be another embryo that was as small as a speck of dust. It was very similar to the embryo formed by the dimensional world, and it was also trembling slightly. That was the minor worlds. The embryo egg, represented by the minor worlds, was different from the embryo egg represented by the dimensional world. Although the embryo egg of the minor worlds was extremely small, there were countless mysterious and unfathomable lines on its surface. These lines contained endless vitality, causing the embryo egg to be full of vitality. It was as if a life could break out of the egg at any time. On the embryo egg, represented by the dimensional world, the infinite boy sat cross-legged. His eyes were blank, and there seemed to be billions of light and shadows rapidly flashing through them. The aura that his body emitted was constantly changing as the billions of light and shadows flashed by. It was constantly improving, constantly transforming. As it changed, the mysterious place created by the 3,000 worlds was also undergoing some kind of indescribable change. It seemed to be gradually evolving toward a certain state, and it seemed to be gradually collapsing. Seeing this, Luo Fan's mind flashed with a trace of satisfaction. He knew that at this time, the infinite boy was undergoing the process of transforming from an immortal treasure to a primordial unity treasure. When the infinite boy truly comprehended primordial unity, the Void Wuji Palace would truly become a primordial unity treasure. At that time, although the power of the infinite boy was not as powerful as that of Luo Fan, he could easily kill any existence at the peak of the golden immortal realm. It's a pity that it will still take a long time. As this thought flashed through Luo Fan's mind, he took a step forward and stepped into the embryo below the limitless boy, arriving at the dimensional realm that he had just opened. This dimensional world was boundless, and there were almost all the wonders of heaven and earth that Luo Fan had seen. The scenery was incomparably beautiful, and it was also extremely natural. At this moment, the dimensional world was also undergoing the same changes as the minor kiliocosm. However, what Luo Fan saw was countless times more than what Lei Jiuxiao had seen. Through his true eyes of sun and moon, he could clearly see that each and every mysterious thread in the void of this dimensional realm, under the effect of the profound energy condensed from the 3,000 worlds, was connected to the powder that was compressed and crushed by the endless star essence energy. In some mysterious and unfathomable state, these threads became more solid, more flexible, and easier to control. In Lei Jiuxiao's perception, the supreme existence that controlled the entire world, and the entire world was the infinite boy. The supreme existence was changing, and the infinite boy was changing. With a slight thought from Luo Fan, the time in the dimensional world suddenly accelerated. In an instant, it accelerated from twice the speed of the primordial world to 36 times the speed of the primordial world. Any world, regardless of whether it was a major kiliocosm, a minor kiliocosm, or even an even smaller space-time array that could not even be called a world, could at most maintain a stable speed of 365 times the speed of the primordial world. This was the rule of the primordial world, and it could also be called the Great Tao of the primordial world. Therefore, the dimensional world could at most maintain a stable speed of 365 times the speed of the previous world that it was attached to. However, at that moment, the Void Wuji Palace had not been successfully refined. The ability to change time was naturally not complete. However, it could only speed up by 36 times. The flow of time in the medium world and the minor kiliocosm could be superimposed. The flow of time in the medium world had increased to 36 times that of the primordial world. In addition, the flow of time in the minor kiliocosm was also 365 times that of the medium world. In that case, under Luo Fan's changes, the flow of time in the minor kiliocosm had already accelerated to a terrifying level of more than 13,000 times that of the primordial world. Luo Fan's mind raced. He had already calculated everything, and a smile appeared on his face. With a light step, he had already passed through a certain part of the dimensional world that was hard to guess. It did not seem to exist, but in Luo Fan's eyes, it was so obvious that he had arrived in the minor kiliocosm. He had spent more than 10,000 years to obtain the Grand Yi-Dao fruit. If the infinite boy wanted to comprehend the Grand Yi-Dao, he would probably have to spend 10 times or even dozens of times more time than Luo Fan. Luo Fan did not have that much time to waste, so he naturally would not wait at the side. Arriving at the top of the minor kiliocosm, Luo Fan directly sat cross-legged on the platform in the middle of the lightning pool. When the lightning pool changed in the minor kiliocosm, the secondary kiliocosm, and the Void Wuji Palace, it was also nurturing some kind of mysterious change. However, because the infinite boy's transformation had not been completed, this mysterious change was only suppressed in the lightning pool and did not erupt. Therefore, the lightning pool was still the same as before, but the aura that it exuded seemed to have changed a little. Luo Fan did not care about this change. He sat cross-legged and closed his eyes, slowly comprehending the Grand Yi-Dao fruit that he had obtained. He sensed any trace of the Grand Yi-Dao fruit's fluctuations and comprehended the various truths of heaven and earth that were revealed. Although this kind of comprehension could not increase his strength, it could allow him to grasp his own strength in detail and grasp the endless mysteries of heaven and earth that he had comprehended when he obtained the Grand Yi-Dao fruit. The Grand Yi-Dao fruit was extremely profound and indescribably profound. Compared to the earthly immortal Dao fruit, it had undergone an enormous change. After obtaining the Grand Yi-Dao fruit, the Grand Yi-Dao fruit did not need to be like the earthly immortal Dao fruit. After it was exhausted, it had to absorb energy once more in order to recover. Instead, it could be exhausted at any time and replenished at any time. After his spirit energy units were exhausted, the Grand Yi-Dao fruit would slowly recover them and replenish the exhausted spirit energy units. These replenished spirit energy units were all full, and it was absolutely not like the scene of the earthly immortal Dao fruit, recovering spirit energy that was only an empty shell. When Luo Fan was refining the Void Wuji Palace, even though he had exhausted a huge amount of spirit energy, the spirit energy units within his Grand Yi-Dao fruit had already recovered 96 million. Moreover, every single spirit energy unit was full of energy and sufficient. This was because the Grand Yi-Dao fruit had already formed its own body, and it contained the might of a world and was able to produce its own energy. Of course, this kind of self-produced energy also had its limits. It could only replenish his consumption, but it could not allow him to improve. If Luo Fan wanted to improve his cultivation and cultivation realm, then he needed to absorb boundless spirit energy and refine it into the source of spirit energy. Moreover, he needed to comprehend the grand Tao of the heavens and the earth and the profundities of nature in order to improve his cultivation realm. Time passed slowly. In the blink of an eye, a yuan hui had passed. On this day, Luo Fan, who was sitting cross-legged on the platform with his eyes closed and comprehending his grand Eat Dao fruit, suddenly shook his body. Suddenly, there were boundless sounds of thunder and lightning coming from within his body. Hundreds of millions of heavenly flowers, boundless rays of light, countless golden lotuses, and the sound of the grand Tao that shook the heavens and the earth suddenly appeared out of thin air and enveloped the entire world. Suddenly, Luo Fan opened his eyes. In the blink of an eye, all the phenomena in the world completely dissipated, and boundless golden and silver light enveloped the entire minor kiliocosm. A grand voice that seemed to be born from the void suddenly reverberated in the minor kiliocosm in a way that ordinary people could not hear. Tide descends from the sky, and the universe revolves with me. This voice was like the mantra of the Grand Tao. In the entire minor kiliocosm, perhaps only Lei Jiuxiao could hear it clearly. The rest of the billions of living beings could only hear the rumbling, as if thunder and lightning had shrouded them in the depths of their hearts. After saying this, Luo Fan smiled slightly. His eyes blinked slightly, and the golden and silver light that filled the sky disappeared in an instant, and his pupils also returned to their original pitch-black color. The natural golden and silver light that had fused with his pupils had been completely hidden. I didn't expect to have such an unexpected gain. This yuanhui time was not wasted. Luo Fan smiled slightly, stood up, and stepped into the void. In an instant, he stepped into the place where the embryo of the medium and small kiliocosm formed by the 3,000 worlds was. At the same time, it was where the limitless boy was. At this moment, the limitless boy's eyes were still blank, and there were still countless lights flashing in his pupils. But the aura on his body had already risen to an incomparably vast and terrifying realm. It was overwhelming, as if an indomitable god was standing there. If I don't wake up now, when will I wake up? Luo Fan said softly. As he said this, he raised his hand to cover the void. A very strange distortion occurred where the limitless boy was. This distortion was like countless mysterious and incredible changes had suddenly occurred in space-time. Following this change, the lights in the limitless boy's pupils flashed tens of thousands of times faster, and his aura also increased at a speed that was tens of thousands of times faster than before. In just a short while, a huge change that would normally take tens of thousands of years had already occurred. Chapter 326. 133,325. In an instant, the limitless boy's body that was sitting cross-legged on the embryo egg suddenly burst out with billions of rays of light. The billions of rays of light filled the entire mysterious place, created by 3,000 worlds, constantly attacking and fusing. This strange existence that caused time and space to distort rapidly changed during this process. In just an instant, it had already turned into a mysterious and vast palace. At the same time, the entire Danglin Ju Palace in the minor kiliocosm shook slightly, and then it completely disappeared from the minor kiliocosm. After the peak palace disappeared, the sacred mountain that stood in the center of the mini kiliocosm, like an indomitable spirit, had turned into an extremely ordinary mountain. Even the mist that had originally enveloped the mountain, as well as the mysterious formation that prevented other living beings from stepping foot onto the sacred mountain, had completely disappeared in an instant. Following the disappearance of the Dang Lin Absolute Top Palace from the Minor Thousand World, the mysterious place created by the profound energy produced by the 3,000 worlds turned into a vast palace, and the various details in this palace were impressively the scene inside the Dang Lin Absolute Top Palace. The billions of rays of light on the limitless boy gradually dissipated as the palace became more and more complete. When the light on his body completely disappeared, the true form of the limitless boy finally appeared. At this moment, although the limitless boy still looked 18 or 19 years old, he looked like he had experienced the vicissitudes of time. He seemed to have some sort of extremely close connection with the Supreme Grand Tao, and it seemed like he only needed a single thought from him to open his mouth, and the Supreme Grandao would respond to him, causing the world to change and nature to change. It really is Tai. A faint smile appeared on Luo Fan's face when he saw this. The Limitless Boy's performance showed that he had comprehended Tai and surpassed the heavenly limit of immortal treasures. Thank you, Master. After the Limitless Boy retracted the rays of light, he stepped in front of Luo Fan and bowed to thank him. Luo Fan smiled faintly. He raised his hand, and a huge force was generated, lifting Child Wuji up. He said, "There is no need to thank me. You have improved, which is a great benefit to me. You only need to help me control the dimensional realm and the minor dimension in the future. That will be enough." Limitless obeys. Limitless Boy's eyes seemed to flash with emotions as he bowed again. Luo Fan nodded his head. He lifted his hand and waved lightly. The lightning pool in the depths of the palace suddenly surged with countless waves. The metamorphosis that had been suppressed and waiting for time to erupt erupted in an instant. In that instant, all the water in the lightning pool broke through the limits of the lightning pool. Its volume increased by billions of times, and it spread out in all directions. In the blink of an eye, the entire temple was submerged. Even the embryo that represented the dimensional realm, and even the feet of Luo Fan and the Limitless Boy were no exception. After the lightning pool water submerged the ground of the temple, it surged violently. There seemed to be countless strange sounds coming from it. Luo Fan took a step forward and brought the Limitless Boy to the top of the temple. Under his feet was the embryo egg of the dimensional realm. The minor dimension was in this embryo egg, but needless to say, the area of this temple seemed to be very large. It seemed to be boundless, but it also seemed to be very small. It was only a few dozen feet in radius. Its height was the same. It seemed to be infinitely high, but it also seemed to be less than one person. Luo Fan's position at this moment was right above the center of the temple. Looking down, it seemed that every inch of the entire temple and every room appeared in his eyes. However, it also seemed very low. Under his feet was the endless waves of lightning water that could be destroyed by the waves at any time. With a thought, he waved his left hand. Lei Jiuxiao, Lei Ling, and the 10 yellow scarf warriors were all taken into his sleeve universe. At this moment, countless vitality quickly condensed in the lightning water. It was as if the world had changed and the world had changed. In the blink of an eye, the lightning water had turned into countless strange creatures formed by pure earth lightning. These strange creatures formed by the earth lightning were not controlled and fabricated by Luo Fan. They were naturally formed by the lightning pool water, but they could also be called Sciention creatures. These Sciention life forms naturally contain a great deal of mysteriousness. The biggest manifestation of this was that within the bodies of each of these strange life forms, there was a mysterious and complicated three-dimensional talisman. The three-dimensional talisman in the body of these creatures contained the origin of thunder. Any of the three-dimensional talisman was enough to form a very mysterious thunder technique that contained incredible power. Luo Fan raised his hand and made a grabbing gesture. A lightning creature in the shape of a thunder dragon appeared in his hand. This thunder dragon's spiritual consciousness was chaotic and hazy. Its every movement contained extremely terrifying power. However, it was rather docile and tame in front of Luo Fan. It wriggled slightly in Luo Fan's hand and coiled up along Luo Fan's arm. It seemed to be very dependent on him. There were traces of lightning flickering around its body. Each lightning contained enough power to turn a 10,000 feet tall mountain into powder. When it struck Luo Fan's body, it did not make Luo Fan feel the slightest pressure. An indifferent expression appeared on Luo Fan's face. With a flash of the true eyes of sun and moon, he had already seen the complicated three-dimensional talisman in the Thunder Dragon's body. So that's how it is. It's the thunder technique that I've comprehended. After seeing it clearly, a trace of understanding flashed in Luo Fan's mind. Although the countless creatures that were born in this pool of thunder were born naturally, because they were affected by the aura that Luo Fan emitted for tens of thousands of years. They naturally evolved the various thunder techniques that Luo Fan comprehended. The billions of creatures formed by the earth thunder below represented the billions of thunder techniques that Luo Fan comprehended. He raised his hand and sent this thunder dragon, which was very dependent on Luo Fan, into the thunder water below. The structure of this palace was similar to that of the Peak Palace. Although it had been submerged by the huge amount of thunder water, its general structure was not damaged. Luo Fan raised his hand and gently beckoned. The palace changed slightly, as if it had shrunk, and as if it had grown bigger. In the blink of an eye, it had become a small island in a vast and boundless sea of thunder. The location of the island happened to be where the platform in the middle of the lightning pool was, which was on the embryo egg that represented the medium-class world. Although the entire island was not covered, it gave people the feeling that the entire island was a magnificent and majestic palace. It was mysterious and wonderful. As the island returned to its original position, the entire Void Wuji Palace, the entire medium-class world, and the entire minor Kiliacosm trembled violently. Every time this mysterious tremor occurred, the medium-class world, the minor Kiliacosm, and the Void Wuji Palace seemed to be more integrated. Every time the tremor occurred, it was as if it was refining steel. It constantly fused the three. It was only a matter of time before the island finally stabilized. Within 1,000,000 kilometers of the primordial world's Buzhou Mountain, a smallpox that no living being could tell what kind of creature it was suddenly floated. There was also a voice that sounded like the universe was narrating a supreme technique. Bursts of strange fragrance filled the world. A multicolored light that any living being found extremely beautiful enveloped the entire Buzhou Mountain. It even penetrated through and rushed into the endless starry sky above, making the entire primordial world look more dazzling than billions of stars in the endless starry sky. This strange phenomenon lasted for a full 2 hours before it completely disappeared. This magic treasure was personally refined by Luo Fan. Naturally, everything that happened in it was easily sensed by Luo Fan. In the blink of an eye, he already knew that the Void Wuji Palace had finally been reforged. He lifted his foot and took a light step. His figure had already disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already in the medium-class world. The location of the palace was not a fixed space. It was an incredible place that was opened up by the Xian energy of the 3,000 worlds. This location could be connected to every space in the Void Wuji Palace, and it existed higher than any world in the Void Wuji Palace. The flow of time in this location was also the same as the flow of time in any place in the Void Wuji Palace. Previously, when Luo Fan comprehended his Tai Dao fruit, the time that the Wuji boy spent to transform here was not any shorter than that of Luo Fan. It was also more than a Yuan Wei. In this medium-class world, the place that Luo Fan occupied was still on the mountain that was tens of thousands of kilometers high. Looking down, he saw that the medium-class world had already evolved with endless vitality. There were all kinds of plants, and even countless beasts were born naturally. Luo Fan was not surprised that there was vitality in it. After all, the spirit space was attached to the medium-class world. Although it was not under Luo Fan's control, under the circulation of the heavenly way, the medium-class world would naturally evolve with everything that the spirit space had. If there were another hundreds of thousands of years, not to mention beasts and plants, even humans and demons would evolve in this medium-class world. Taking a deep breath, Luo Fan's mind merged with the entire medium-class world. In an instant, endless light and shadows, immeasurable information, and endless mysteries flowed through his mind. In the blink of an eye, Luo Fan had completely grasped the entire medium-class world. With a slight movement of his mind, the flow of time in the medium-class world accelerated rapidly. From the original untainted world to 36 times faster, 37 times, 38 times, 50 times, 60 times, and finally, it increased to 365 times the untainted world. It reached the limit that a space could accelerate time faster than the upper space. When it reached this multiplier, no matter how Luo Fan urged it, no matter how he thought away, he could no longer increase the flow of time in the slightest. The flow of time in the medium-class world had accelerated to this point, but the flow of time in the spirit space had increased to an extremely terrifying level. At this time, the flow of time in the spirit space had increased to 133,325 times. With such a terrifying speed, it meant that 1 year in the untainted world would pass 133,325 years in the spirit space. When the flow of time in the medium-class world stabilized at this time, it was equivalent to Luo Fan having endless time. With a slight movement of his mind, Luo Fan took a step forward and entered the spirit space hidden behind the medium-class world. When he arrived at the spirit space, Luo Fan could not help but smile bitterly. At this time, the amount of vitality in the spirit space had decreased by dozens of times compared to before. The vitality contained in the void had become very thin. According to such a thin concentration of vitality, the path of cultivation in the spirit space would be more than 100 times more difficult. If the previous lesser thousand worlds were able to develop a high-level martial arts civilization with the power to move mountains and overturn seas, then now, this lesser thousand world could at most develop a mid-level martial arts civilization similar to the one Luo Fan had seen in his previous life, which had the legend of breaking through the void. The number of cultivators would be extremely reduced. Perhaps 1 in 10,000 people would have such qualifications, and 1 in 100,000 cultivators would be able to ascend. From the looks of it, the quality of the cultivators that walk out of this spirit space will greatly increase, but the number will not be much different from before. Luo Fan sighed, but he was still satisfied. After obtaining the Tai Idao fruit, his body would generate energy. Although it could not be used for cultivation, it was enough to replenish all his energy. This kind of spirit space was enough for him to cultivate all kinds of divine abilities and spells that required a huge amount of time. With a thought, he lifted his foot and took a light step forward. With a light step, he had already stepped out of the small Kiliacosm and arrived at the palace that was in the shape of an island that was surrounded by the sea of lightning. This sea of lightning seemed to be vast and boundless, but in fact, there was no concept of distance. In Luo Fan's case, he only needed to take a step without using any magical abilities, and he could easily cross it. But if it was an outsider, he would not be able to cross this sea of lightning, even if he flew for thousands of years. You control this treasure well and work hard to accumulate power so that you can open another spirit space as soon as possible. Luo Fan said to the limitless boy who was still standing on the side. Yes. The limitless boy bowed and said. Luo Fan nodded and made a cover with his left hand. Lei Jiuxiao, Lei Ling, and the yellow turban warriors appeared everywhere on this island out of thin air, in their original positions. During this time, even Lei Jiuxiao, who was given a super perception by Luo Fan, did not notice that his position had changed, let alone that he had been in Luo Fan's sleeve for a long time. Only Lei Jiuxiao was slightly confused. Why did his super perception suddenly disappear? Luo Fan said indifferently, Jiuxiao, my disciple, the world has been reforged, and the flow of time has accelerated again. You still have hundreds of millions of years to cultivate, but don't be impatient. His voice was not loud, but it easily reached the ears of Lei Jiuxiao, who was cultivating, so Lei Jiuxiao could hear every word clearly. Lei Jiuxiao's mind was astonishing. Since he knew that Luo Fan would accelerate the flow of time after reforging the world, he was not surprised that he suddenly had hundreds of millions of years. He stood up and bowed in the direction of Luo Fan. Disciple understands. I will definitely comprehend the great Tao with all my heart. I will not be impatient. Luo Fan smiled and no longer cared about Lei Jiuxiao. He glanced at the limitless boy and took a step out of the Void Wuji Palace, arriving at the top of Buzhou Mountain. Raising his hand and waving, the Void Wuji Palace shrank quickly. Within a blink of an eye, it turned into a fist-sized miniature palace and fell into Luo Fan's palm. Holding the Void Wuji Palace in his hand, Luo Fan instantly felt that he was holding a whole world which contained an inexhaustible power, and that he could borrow the power of this world at any time. A primordial unity treasure indeed. Sensing the feeling of the Void Wuji Palace, Luo Fan couldn't help but praise. The Void Wuji Palace transformed into a dark yellow beam of light, darting straight into the Mud Pill Palace between his eyebrows, then through a mysterious place in the Mud Pill Palace, straight into his spiritual world. At the moment, Luo Fan's spiritual world didn't change too much compared to before, but the luster of Pan Goosebone was warmer and more translucent, seeming to be many times harder than before. The Void Wuji Palace rotated, grew to thousands of meters tall, and landed beside the foot of the Pan Goosebone. Just like what happened to Luo Fan after he attained the primordial unity fruit of Tao. After the Void Wuji Palace became a primordial unity treasure, it could no longer be improved by absorbing the primordial energy and using the inexhaustible power to refine itself. According to Luo Fan's speculation, because this magic treasure had been reforged with the 3,000 worlds, it might need to open up 3,000 small worlds in a medium-sized world, or even a great world, in order to become a great Luo heavenly treasure. Afterwards, as for how to form a primordial essence spirit treasure, he needed to at least completely cultivate the 3,000 worlds. In other words, he needed to open up 3,000 great worlds. Each great world needed 3,000 dimensional worlds, and each dimensional world needed 3,000 minor worlds to open up. It was a long way to go, but there was no end in sight. Perhaps it would take an infinite number of eons for the Void Wuji Palace to reach the unimaginable level of a primordial spirit treasure. Sighing inwardly, Jihao stopped thinking about the future of the Void Wuji Palace. He raised a finger, and a gray, mysterious spiritual light rushed out of the universe in his sleeve and condensed into a sphere in front of him. This was the innate, inextinguishable spiritual light that he had thrown into the samsara of the spirit space for tens of millions of years with the help of a little bit of his spirit soul. After Luo Fan had comprehended the primordial unity Tao fruit for more than Yuan Wei, his understanding of the primordial unity Tao fruit was 100 times greater than before, and the power he could exert was countless times stronger than before. Not only had the primitive world he could control expanded to 49,000 miles, but his true eyes of sun and moon had also improved greatly. At this moment, as his eyes shone with golden and silver light, he saw the inside of the innate, inextinguishable spiritual light. This innate, inextinguishable spirit light was filled with the aura of Luo Fan's godly soul. Although this aura was completely different from the innate, inextinguishable spirit light and seemed to be incompatible with each other, there was some kind of mysterious connection between them. They were entangled very tightly, as if they were in a state of fusion. Chapter 3:27. Refined Spirit Light. The source of slaughter. Although these auras weren't able to subdue the connate spirit light for Luo Fan right now, they had set a precedent for Luo Fan's subsequent subduing, greatly reducing the difficulty of subduing it. At this moment, Luo Fan's soul had already fused with the connate spirit light from the outer realms, so he already possessed the incredible characteristic of being innately indestructible. As such, Luo Fan did not need to think too much about the use of this connate indestructible spirit light like he did with the connate indestructible spirit light he had obtained in the past. Instead, he could directly determine that after subduing this connate indestructible spirit light, he would use some methods to promote this connate indestructible spirit light to evolve into a connate spirit treasure. Connate spirit treasures were called spirit treasures, and they were also connate, but their nature was profound to the point of being inconceivable. In terms of power alone, perhaps it was far inferior to chaotic spirit treasures that were formed from ordinary magic treasures that were refined to the peak, but its miraculous characteristic of being innately indestructible was enough to suppress all chaotic spirit treasures, making it more precious than any powerful chaotic spirit treasure. It could be said that if this connate spirit light evolved into a connate spirit treasure, then he could use it to protect himself in the future and he would be invincible. At that time, if there wasn't an attack from a connate spirit treasure of the same nature, or a cultivator that had attained chaotic essence, then no attack in the world would be able to break through this connate spirit treasure's defense and harm Luo Fan. It could be said that if he obtained a connate spirit treasure, Luo Fan would be invincible in any battle in the future. Luo Fan was already aware of all this, so he didn't need to think too much about it. With just a thought, a powerful suction force appeared out of thin air in his Niwen palace between his brows, and it acted on the connate spirit light without any obstruction. The innate, inextinguishable spiritual light already contained Luo Fan's aura, so it naturally felt a sense of intimacy towards Luo Fan. Even though it was attracted by the suction force, it did not resist and directly charged into his Niwen palace. Then it rushed to a mysterious position and entered the world of Luo Fan's sea of consciousness. In Luo Fan's spiritual world, Pangu's bones suddenly opened its mouth and inhaled this pre-world inextinguishable light, then swallowed it directly. Pangu's bones were skeletons, but after all, they were made by Luo Fan with his supreme power. Based on Pangu's body, they were naturally different from ordinary bones. Not only was it infinitely sturdy and unbreakable, but it also contained all sorts of inconceivable abilities and characteristics. It was just like how the inside of Pangu's bone wasn't empty like what the outside world saw through the bone. Instead, it seemed to contain an undeveloped world. This undeveloped world had no top, no bottom, no front, no back, no size, no distance. It seemed to be infinitely vast, but also infinitely small. It could contain the whole world, but also seemed to contain nothing. It could even be called the universe inside the body. After the Pangu's bone swallowed the inextinguishable spiritual light, it directly surged into the mysterious universe inside the body and was wrapped up by an immeasurably mysterious power, then sealed in the center of the universe inside the body. After attaining the fruit of Tao of Tai, Luo Fan's soul had already changed in nature. It had become more compatible with the world and was even more magical, able to command the world. Once the inextinguishable spiritual light was wrapped up, the size of the pre-world inextinguishable spiritual light suddenly expanded by over 1,000 times, turning into an enormous gray ball, slowly rotating in the universe inside the body of Pangu's bone. The magical power that wrapped up the gray ball was generated from Luo Fan's power, which existed in the universe inside Pangu's body. It contained an incredible secret that couldn't be explained with a few words. If this magical power completely merged with the pre-world inextinguishable spiritual light, it would mean that this pre-world inextinguishable spiritual light had already been subdued by Luo Fan, and this pre-world inextinguishable spiritual light would truly belong to Luo Fan. The pre-world inextinguishable spiritual light seemed to know the consequences of letting this magical power enter its body. Although it had been reincarnated for countless times and was a little dependent on Luo Fan's power, at this moment, it still started resisting crazily. The pre-world inextinguishable spiritual light was only a spiritual light, but it already contained an incredible power. Within a breath, countless magical beings emerged on the surface of this enormous ball. Among these magical beings, there were billions of creatures, all kinds of natural phenomena, wind, rain, thunder, and lightning, all kinds of strange things containing endless mysteries. As soon as these countless existences appeared, they condensed all their power to resist Luo Fan's overwhelming power that wrapped around the giant ball. It actually has such a powerful instinctive change. It seems that the tens of millions of reincarnations have also benefited it. This is unexpected. Such a thought flashed in Luo Fan's mind, but he was not the slightest bit worried. Luo Fan was quite familiar with the countless strange existences that had evolved in the giant gray ball. The endless existences were all the substances, natural landscapes, and powerful creatures that contained destructive power in the spirit space. Clearly, during the tens of millions of reincarnations, this pre-world inextinguishable spiritual light had instinctively gathered information from the outside world and turned it into a template for its own transformation. These endless existences exhausted all kinds of destructive powers that were naturally born in a world, but these kinds of destructive powers were nothing to Luo Fan, who had already attained the grand unity Tao fruit. He could even easily find the weaknesses of these magical beings and defeat them with one strike. However, the pre-world inextinguishable spiritual light was, after all, a pre-world inextinguishable spiritual light. These magical beings were very weak to Luo Fan, but they all contained the characteristics of the pre-world inextinguishable spiritual light. No matter how many times it was defeated by the mysterious energy formed by Luo Fan's aura, it would be reborn in an instant. Wave after wave, it would unceasingly continue to be used against that mysterious energy, layer by layer, blocking the mysterious energy from entering again. Seeing this, Luo Fan wasn't angry. Instead, he was slightly happy. At this moment, such a change had already happened, which meant that this pre-world inextinguishable spiritual light had already begun to evolve into a pre-world spirit treasure. In this way, after he subdued it, the time it took for it to evolve into a pre-world spirit treasure would be greatly shortened. Perhaps it would only take him tens of yuan hui to finish the evolution. Dozens of yuan hui, this might have been a long time for Luo Fan in the past. But for Luo Fan, who already had the spirit space, which had a time flow of 133,325 times faster, it would only take him tens of years. How could Luo Fan not be happy about this? After understanding this, Luo Fan thought for a while, then a dazzling light emerged from his body. The light was extremely mysterious. It directly connected with the supreme great Tao in the primordial world. It penetrated his body and shone into his sea of consciousness. As the light emerged, the towering Pan Gu's bone quaked abruptly, and the gold and silver light in its eyes instantly soared. Meanwhile, the world inside the Pan Gu's bone was strengthened by some kind of incredible power. That power was high above, overlooking everything and controlling everything. That was the supreme power of the great Tao in the chaos. It was Luo Fan who had used the power to command heaven and earth after attaining the primordial unity Tao fruit, and the power of the great Tao of the primordial world to guide and help him subdue the connate, inextinguishable spiritual light. Just now, after using his own aura to evolve into a mysterious power to test it, Luo Fan knew that the connate, inextinguishable spiritual light was mysterious. The innate, inextinguishable spirit light was extremely profound. Even if he had attained the primordial unity Tao fruit, it was impossible for him to affect the innate, inextinguishable spirit light with his own power, let alone completely subduing it. That was why he had taken out his plan and guided the supreme power of the great Tao of the primordial world to help him subdue the connate, inextinguishable spiritual light. Although the connate, inextinguishable spiritual light was mysterious, it was not comparable to the chaos. Even though the supreme power of the great Tao that Luo Fan guided was only a trace, it was not something that the connate, inextinguishable spiritual light could resist. In an instant, the countless mysterious existences on the surface of the giant ball collapsed in an instant, wiped out by the supreme power of the great Tao. The surface of the giant ball became extremely smooth, and the innate, indestructible light was no longer concealed. It was exposed to the mysterious power. Luo Fan, of course, would not be polite. He combined the power evolved from his own aura with the supreme power of the great Tao, and together with the supreme power of the great Tao, directly smashed into the connate, inextinguishable spiritual light. Crack, boom, hum, rumble, swish, countless incredible sounds came from the connate, inextinguishable spiritual light. The world seemed to be shaking, the world was evolving, and the world was flowing naturally. The endless light released from Luo Fan's body quickly converged, and all the light poured into his body without reservation. Through the circulation of his body, the light poured into his spiritual sea world, and directly smashed into the world inside the pan goosebone. As the light poured in, the supreme power of the great Tao suddenly increased by hundreds of times. In the blink of an eye, the mysterious power that contained Luo Fan's aura flowed through every inch of the innate, inextinguishable spiritual light, completely merging with the innate, inextinguishable spiritual light. The moment the mysterious power that represented Luo Fan's aura completely merged with the connate, inextinguishable spiritual light, the connate, inextinguishable spiritual light suddenly released billions of light beams. After the light beams disappeared, Luo Fan's senses gained a very mysterious feeling. It was as if he had gained another body, and also as if his body had been greatly extended. Once again, an indescribable sense of security rose in his heart, as if some kind of existence had isolated him from all evils in the world. Smiling, Luo Fan knew that he had completely subdued the connate, inextinguishable spiritual light. If he wanted to, he could even refine the connate, inextinguishable spiritual light within a moment, merge it with his own soul, and give his soul the special quality of being undamaged. However, he surely wouldn't do that. His divine soul had already fused with the innate, inextinguishable spirit light, and had already possessed the property of being undamaged. Even if he fused with the innate, inextinguishable spirit light, it would not be able to increase the property of his divine soul, and it would be a great waste. With a slight thought, the mysterious light beam that was absorbed into the world inside the pan, Goosebone slowly faded away. The supreme power of the great Tao that was drawn over by him slowly shrank as well. Soon, it returned to the pan Goosebone. At this point, Luo Fan heaved a sigh of relief. He raised a finger, and the connate, inextinguishable spiritual light directly passed through several layers of barriers and appeared in his palm. For you, I owe the world a great deal of karma. Luo Fan sighed. Even for Luo Fan, who had already attained the primordial unity fruit of Wei, it wasn't that easy to draw the supreme power from the unseen, inextinguishable spiritual light to help him subdue the treasure. Naturally, it couldn't be done without any cost. This cost was karma. If Luo Fan's cultivation was insufficient in the future and he couldn't pay off the karma, he would forever be restricted by the untainted world. Even if his cultivation reached the untainted spiritual light, he wouldn't be able to break out of the untainted world. However, for the connate, inextinguishable spiritual light, everything was worth it. The connate, inextinguishable spiritual light had already undergone a mysterious change. Although it looked the same as before, with the connection between Luo Fan and the connate, inextinguishable spiritual light, he could easily know that the connate, inextinguishable spiritual light was slowly shrinking at this moment. It was like an egg that was pregnant with some kind of existence. The entire breeding process was complicated and mysterious. Even the current Luo Fan couldn't see through it. With a slight thought, countless mysterious and unpredictable threads suddenly appeared out of nowhere in the void. They quickly twisted, entangled, and recombined. In the blink of an eye, they had turned into countless complicated and mysterious three-dimensional talismans. They were spherical and directly wrapped the connate, inextinguishable spiritual light within them. As the complicated and mysterious three-dimensional talismans wrapped around the connate, inextinguishable spiritual light, the evolution process that even Luo Fan couldn't see through seemed to speed up a lot. You can evolve into a treasure to protect yourself and kill demons. Luo Fan smiled slightly. He raised his hand and pointed. The connate, inextinguishable spiritual light, wrapped by the complicated spherical, three-dimensional talismans, rushed into the world of his sea of consciousness. Then, it directly entered the void Wuji Palace. However, this time, it didn't appear in a mini Kiliacosm. Instead, it directly appeared in the depths of the palace at the outermost layer. It floated at the place where Luo Fan originally practiced and slowly rotated. In the process of rotation, the entire palace expanded and contracted as if it was slowly breathing. With this expansion and contraction, there seemed to be a very mysterious and wonderful aura constantly surging in and out from the outside world. Every time it surged in and out, it was centered around the connate, inextinguishable spiritual light. This palace was a strange place created by the condensation of the 3,000 worlds. This place was not a fixed space, nor did it have a fixed time. However, it could be the same time as any world inside the Void Wuji Palace. As such, Luo Fan accelerated it to 133,325 times that of the Great Desolate World. Although it wasn't a mini kiliocosm, it was the same time as a mini kiliocosm. Because this was the center of the Void Wuji Palace, the density of vitality wasn't as thin as that of the mini kiliocosm. It could be said to be quite perfect. As the palace expanded and contracted like it was breathing, the aura that entered and exited was naturally Luo Fan's aura. Although he had already subdued the innate, inextinguishable spirit light, he still needed to constantly refine it in order to deepen the connection. Luo Fan naturally wouldn't waste these dozens of Yuan Hui's time. After all of this was done, Luo Fan seemed to have sensed something. He took a step forward and arrived inside the search cave. He sat down cross-legged with his eyes closed and quietly waited. After a while, a thought entered his mind through some mysterious and unfathomable connection. With a slight movement in his heart, Luo Fan analyzed this thought. It was a message for help from Ao Lai and Ao Yin. So that's how it is. No wonder I sensed something before. Such a thought flashed through Luo Fan's mind as he analyzed this message. He didn't stop. With a thought, an auspicious cloud appeared under his feet, displaying the supreme truths of the heavenly Tao and the mysteries of the great Tao. This auspicious cloud carried the ethereal sound of the great Tao. After it appeared, it trembled slightly and carried Luo Fan across the void. It seemed to be moving slowly, but it was actually moving very quickly. It floated towards a certain direction in the north. Luo Fan was extremely fast. In a short while, he had crossed hundreds of billions of kilometers and arrived in front of a cave by the sea. This should be the place, Luo Fan thought to himself as he stopped the auspicious cloud. Ao Lai and Ao Yin's thoughts had come from here, so there was no mistaking it. After dispersing the auspicious cloud under his feet, Luo Fan stood at the entrance of the cave. As soon as he stepped into the cave, an incomparably dense and desolate killing intent spread out from the cave. This killing intent was denser and purer than any killing intent that Luo Fan had encountered before. It was as if a pure killing beast was staring at him from a place not far away, ready to devour him at any time. Could this be the source of slaughter? Luo Fan frowned as such a thought flashed through his mind. This strand of murderous qi was obviously born from the heavens and the earth. It was boundless in quantity, and it was even pure and peerless. It was even to the extent that countless living beings condensed from pure, murderous qi could be born within it. If an ordinary person were to be contaminated by this killing intent, they would instantly become a killing beast. If an innate god with a weak personality stayed in this killing intent for a period of time, it was likely that his personality would change greatly. You found a good place. Luo Fan couldn't help but sigh. This source of slaughter wasn't a good place for innate gods, but it was infinitely beneficial for magic treasures. This was especially true for Ao Lai and Ao Yin, who had cultivated themselves into the golden flood dragon scissors. If they could cultivate in this source of slaughter and use the endless killing intent to temper themselves, the speed of their cultivation would probably be tens of millions of times faster than normal. After sighing, Luo Fan didn't stop. He lifted his foot and stepped into the cave at a moderate pace. Although this killing intent was also a hindrance to innate gods, it was nothing to Luo Fan, who had already attained primordial unity Tao fruit. It couldn't affect him at all. Chapter 328. True intent of slaughter. They have actually already achieved the body of a magic treasure. It seems like they have had quite a lot of fortuitous encounters in these tens of thousands of years. After distinguishing the countless lights and shadows emitted by the sun and moon true pupils, Luo Fan couldn't help but sigh with emotion. The deeper one went into the cave, the denser the killing aura became. Within a radius of several dozen kilometers from the entrance of the cave, the killing aura was still invisible to the naked eye. Only innate gods with keen senses could see it. However, when it was 100 kilometers deep into the cave, the killing aura was so dense that it had formed substance. It looked as if there was a gray airflow revolving around it. The pressure on the soul was 100 times stronger than it was outside. Luo Fan's sun and moon true pupils could illuminate time and space. When he walked by, he casually took a look and knew that Ao Lai and Ao Een had stayed in this area for 100 years. Their goal was naturally to absorb the boundless killing aura to temper themselves. The path of this cave was rather strange, but it was slanted downwards. After going 100 kilometers deep into the cave, Luo Fan had already arrived at a vertical distance of more than 80 kilometers underground. At this time, the mind instructs, in a second, that came from Ao Lai and Ao Een in front of him was only slightly clearer. It was obvious that this distance was only a short distance to this cave, or to the distance between Luo Fan and Ao Lai and Ao Een. Luo Fan sensed all of this, but he no longer walked as slowly as before. With a thought, he shrunk the ground into an inch and entered the depths of the cave. Although he was no longer as leisurely as before, his speed was neither too fast nor too slow. After a long while, Luo Fan had already arrived at a location 10,000 miles deep in the cave. At this point, Luo Fan had no choice but to stop. This was because at this point in the cave, the scene inside had already changed. A mysterious transformation that Luo Fan had never expected had appeared in front of him. In this place, the murderous aura had already reached a limit, and in the end, it had even undergone some sort of profound and extraordinary qualitative change. After this extraordinary change, the grayish airflow had completely disappeared, and the scene before him had turned into that of countless creatures moving and fighting in this cave that was dozens of kilometers in diameter. These living beings that were strange to the point of being unbelievable were condensed from the extremely dense, murderous aura. Each of these strange killing creatures seemed to be able to find its original form in the primordial world. However, each of them seemed to be completely different from any living creature in the primordial world. They were mysterious and indescribably wonderful. These creatures were condensed and compressed from the murderous aura. They were the most original slaughtering creatures, and each of them had an instinctive spirit sense of slaughtering, as well as a super strong instinct of slaughtering. Furthermore, these living beings might have strange forms, but each of their structures were extremely mystical and contained some extremely profound massacre intent. Luo Fan casually grabbed a ferocious life form that looked like a tiger and was 3 meters long with bone spurs all over its body. This life force was not very strong, and it was at most equivalent to a cultivator at the primordial reversion realm. However, its combat strength was 100 times stronger than an ordinary cultivator at the primordial reversion realm. It was actually able to struggle a little under Luo Fan's hands. It erupted with a surging murderous aura and rolled towards Luo Fan. Its claws, teeth, and bone spurs clawed towards Luo Fan in a way that had the greatest lethality. Luo Fan's cultivation realm was unfathomable, and he naturally would not be moved by such a weak living being. With a wave of his hand, he subdued the living being, causing it to completely lose consciousness. It could only fall limply at his feet, unable to move. He looked at this living being. With a turn of the true eyes of sun and moon in his eyes, he directly saw through the past and future of this living being and grasped all the mysteries of its body structure. Even the entire process of its formation was in his eyes, without a trace of reservation. With just a glance, Luo Fan could even easily recreate the entire process of its formation. He could recreate a living being that was equally powerful, had the same nature, and even had the same spiritual consciousness. The source of slaughter. I see. Luo Fan saw through this living being, and such thoughts flashed in his mind. All the living beings within the cave were condensed from a murderous aura, and they were born from the source of slaughter in the primordial world. So they naturally contained slaughter intent. Every single move they made and every single breath they took revealed a supreme, profound truth of slaughter. This bone spur tiger in front of him was no exception. Through the analysis of this bone spur tiger, just now, Luo Fan instantly comprehended some kind of massacre intent, and the martial Tao volume of the Tao fruit of the way scripture grew a little stronger. The path of martial arts began with battles and massacres. Even though the massacre intent had been developed to the extremity, it still had the same effect as the martial Tao mystics. The massacre intent was able to advance the cultivation of the martial Tao, and it was able to advance the cultivation of the martial Tao. Knowing that these lives of slaughter were also quite beneficial to him, Luo Fan would not be courteous. The true eyes of sun and moon did not relax and covered everything within his sight. It constantly analyzed and absorbed the massacre intent revealed by all the living beings, and then integrated it into the martial Tao volume of the Tao fruit of the way scripture. Along the way, Luo Fan did not stop or relax at all. Although it seemed that he'd gain a lot, in fact, it was just a small supplement. After all, his martial arts manual was already profound to an unimaginable level. This boundless massacre intent might be rather profound, but it was still incomplete and was only a part of the slaughter origin. To be able to supplement it a little was already an unimaginable profundity of the slaughter origin. As Luo Fan absorbed the massacre intent, he continued to head deeper into the cave. The current Luo Fan had the power to command heaven and earth. As long as he did not want to, none of these endless lives of slaughter would be able to discover his arrival. Therefore, it wasn't stopped at all as he continued forward. The deeper Luo Fan went, the more powerful the lives of slaughter formed by the murderous aura became. After another 10,000 miles, the lives of slaughter had already produced many existences that were comparable to cultivators. You dare to go deeper. I don't know if you were stupid or confident. Luo Fan's eyes naturally reflected the scene of Ao Lai and Ao In passing through here thousands of years ago. Back then, they had already cultivated the golden serpent dragon transformation Tao to the peak. The golden serpent scissors that the two of them transformed into was also a treasure. 81 restrictions fused together, forming a mysterious structure that made the power of the golden serpent scissors more than 10,000 times stronger than before it became a treasure. The endless lives of slaughter were unable to withstand the golden serpent scissors. They were all easily turned into nourishment for the two dragons to temper themselves. Through the process of fighting against the endless lives of slaughter, they comprehended quite a bit of massacre intent, allowing the power of the golden serpent scissors to continue to increase. At this moment, Ao Lai and Ao In were still calling for help, but Luo Fan was not in a hurry. After attaining the Tai Yi Dao fruit, he could sense the faintly discernible heavenly secrets at any time. He knew that although the two dragons were in danger, they could still hold on for a few more days. The longer they could hold on, the better it would be for them. He walked in at a steady pace. Unknowingly, he had already arrived at a depth of nearly 70,000 miles, which was a depth of 49,000 miles underground. At this place, he finally saw the source of slaughter. He also saw Ao Lai and Ao In, who were surrounded in a corner of the source of slaughter, defending against the endless slaughter attacks. You two are quite bold. Even before I broke through, I would have to make a lot of preparations before I dared to enter such a source of slaughter. You two have only broken through not long ago, and yet you dare to enter the source? Luo Fan sighed. Ao Lai and Ao In were in despair when they suddenly heard Luo Fan's voice. They were overjoyed and cried out, "Master, save us." This was the deepest part of the cave. It was 100 miles wide, and at the very bottom, there was a gray sharp sword that rushed out from the depths of the ground, connecting the ground and the ceiling of the cave. Around this sharp sword, there were 365 mysterious rings of light that contained endless destruction and slaughter revolving around this huge sharp sword. This sharp sword was condensed and compressed to the limit, and it was the source of slaughter. And the 365 mysterious rings of light around it were the 365 kinds of massacre intents contained in the source of slaughter. These halos of light represented the purest and most primordial abilities. If a cultivator could come here and use some secret technique to turn any of these halos of light into their own, their destructive power would increase by at least 1,000 times. He might even be able to compete with a cultivator who had just stepped into the perfected immortal stage at the peak of the itinerant immortal stage. If he could turn these 365 rings of light into his own and form a heavenly cycle, he would directly achieve the Tao of slaughter and cultivate the slaughter primordial spirit. Wherever it erupted, the world would change color, the sun and moon would lose their light, and it would be enough to turn millions of miles of the untainted world into a desert. It would be enough to obtain the supreme source of slaughter in the untainted world. At that time, not only would his destructive power increase greatly, but he would also be able to fight against a cultivator who had just stepped into the itinerant immortal stage. If he could gather 129,600 massacre intents in the future, he would be able to directly enter the primordial unity stage, and he would probably be comparable to Luo Fan, who had attained the primordial unity Tao fruit. It's a pity that the difficulty of gathering all the massacre intents is so high that it is probably not lower than attaining the primordial unity Tao fruit. Luo Fan saw through all the mysteries of the 365 kinds of massacre intents in an instant, and he could not help but feel helpless. This source of slaughter was not all the source of slaughter in the entire untainted world. The source of slaughter was a mysterious and indescribable existence. There were a total of 129,600 massacre intents in the entire untainted world, which was exactly the number of 1 yuan. Each of these massacre intents was earth-shattering. If one comprehended one of them, one could become an immortal, establish a sect, and turn dust into a world, and turn the world into dust. The massacre intents, because of the evolution of the supreme great Tao in the unseen world, were transformed into countless strange forms and scattered throughout the untainted world. Some merged with the void, some became invisible and scattered across the land, some merged with a certain star in the void, some merged with a certain sand and stone that seeped out of the ground, and some were hidden in a wisp of essence chi. However, they were definitely not like the source of slaughter in front of Luo Fan, which was naked and showed its existence to the world without any concealment. Moreover, even the source of slaughter in front of him was rather hidden. If Ao Lai and Ao Een had not coincidentally entered this place, Luo Fan would probably never have discovered the existence of this source of slaughter. In this way, the difficulty of gathering 129,600 massacre intents in the untainted world was imaginable. At this moment, Ao Lai and Ao Een were in the outermost of the 365 massacre intents. This massacre intents was an extremely profound divine ability that contained endless power. Once one entered it, endless attacks would evolve, endless lives would be born, and endless killing methods would appear out of thin air. Ao Lai and Ao Een were trapped in the endless killing methods evolved from the massacre intents and could not move. This place was already close to the source of slaughter. The density of the desolate killing aura had reached an unbelievable level, and the massacre intents that condensed were also unimaginably powerful. You guys are extremely lucky to be able to break through the blockade of 365 massacre intents and enter. Luo Fan smiled and raised his hand to create a void barrier. The 365 massacre intents that had already discovered his existence were frozen by an invisible force. They gradually shrank and were sealed in his sleeve. These 365 massacre intents were stronger and more complicated than all the massacre intents he had seen before. Each massacre intents contained one of the 365 massacre intents, which were comparable to perfected immortal realm cultivators. Moreover, because of the existence of the massacre intents, the destructive power they could unleash was even stronger than that of golden immortal realm cultivators. If Luo Fan had not attained the primordial unity Tao fruit, he would not have dared to approach this place. Master, save me. The golden WIRM scissors formed by A.O. Lai and A.O. Een shook slightly. They seemed to feel rather ashamed, but they still cried out anxiously. Luo Fan sighed and raised his hand to grab the void. The void changed automatically. Endless rays of light emerged. In an instant, the golden WIRM scissors formed by A.O. Lai and A.O. Een were pulled out and brought to him. With the disappearance of A.O. Lai and A.O. Een, the circle of light that had evolved into countless massacre intents gradually calmed down. Although the entire cave was filled with endless massacre intents, and there were countless roars coming from afar, the source of the massacre intents seemed to be especially calm. The golden WIRM scissors turned in front of Luo Fan and fell down. They turned into two dragon men, one black and one white. They were A.O. Lai and A.O. Een. Compared to tens of thousands of years ago, the two dragons seemed to have experienced the vicissitudes of time. Their temperaments seemed to have matured a lot, and the aura they exuded was many times stronger than before. The two dragons appeared, their faces flushed red. They bowed and said, "Thank you, Master, for saving our lives. There's no need to say so much. You two are really lucky to be able to discover this source of massacre and obtain so many benefits." Luo Fan smiled and helped the two dragons up. "Master, you flatter me. It was just a coincidence that we found something strange in this cave, so we entered it. Although we obtained some benefits, we almost lost our lives. If not for Master, I'm afraid we would have been turned into dust." A.O. Lai said shamefully, "You two were indeed too rash. You still need to cultivate your minds." Luo Fan smiled. "We will always remember Master's teachings." A.O. Lai and A.O. Een bowed and said. After a while, A.O. Lai asked in a low voice, "I wonder what this thing is. I wonder if Master can explain it to us. We have obtained countless benefit from this place for thousands of years, but we don't even know what this thing is. It is really embarrassing." Luo Fan slightly smiled. This was also the truth. He had the memories and knowledge left behind by Panga's origin spirit, and the power of the sun and moon true eyes that could see through the source, so he could recognize this source of massacre. Although A.O. Lai and A.O. Een were innate gods and had cultivated to an extremely high level, it was impossible for them to recognize this source of massacre. Therefore, he smiled and said, "This item is one of the sources of massacre in the chaos world. These 365 circles of divine light are 365 of the 129,600 massacre intents. Its power is almost endless, and it has countless benefits for your cultivation of Dharma treasures. If you can obtain one, it will be much easier for you to break through to the immortal Tao treasure in the future." So it is this thing. A.O. Lai and A.O. Een couldn't help but exclaim when they heard Luo Fan's explanation. No wonder we were able to break through so many levels in the past thousands of years and reach the peak of the Golden Flood Dragon transformation Tao. A.O. Lai sighed. "Once I collect this source of massacre, you two will follow me back to Buzhou Mountain. With your current cultivation, you need time to settle down. There is not much benefit to further training." Luo Fan smiled. "As you command." A.O. Lai and A.O. Een didn't dare to refute. Luo Fan's eyes looked at the two dragons, and he was relieved to know that they didn't have any resentment towards him for collecting the source of massacre. In fact, Luo Fan didn't want to take the source of slaughter for himself when he collected it. This source of massacre was very rare for A.O. Lai and A.O. Een, as well as other innate gods. It could greatly improve their cultivation and greatly increase their destructive power. But to Luo Fan, it was not very useful. Luo Fan had already attained the primordial unity Tao fruit. He only needed to understand the massacre intent. With a casual move, he could use even more destructive and unbelievable killing methods than the massacre intent. Why would he need the massacre intent? And the reason why he didn't explain all of this at this time was because he wanted to test the two dragons, Ao Lai and Ao Yin. After all, the two dragons were not as close to Luo Fan's disciples as they were. He needed to determine their temperaments before he could decide how to treat them. If the two dragons had a trace of resentment, Luo Fan wouldn't have made a move against them, but he wouldn't have cared about their cultivation. Even a massacre intent that he originally planned to use with them would have been left unreleased. The source of massacre was very mysterious. It was closely related to the supreme great Tao of the untainted universe. It was a part of the untainted universe and was an evolution of the great Tao. Even if Luo Fan collected it, the supreme great Tao would naturally evolve a new source of massacre. However, the untainted universe wouldn't lose a part of the source of massacre just because Luo Fan collected it. Therefore, Luo Fan didn't hesitate to collect the source of massacre. With a thought, he raised his hand and waved it lightly. Mysterious and unfathomable trajectories appeared under his hand. Chapter 329. Luo Fu reappeared with 1,000,000 cultivators in an instant. Countless wondrous scenes suddenly appeared out of nowhere and filled the depths of the cave. They were 49,000 kilometers away from the ground. A wave of mysterious light filled the depths of the cave, illuminating it as if the world had changed. Along with the light, a strange fragrance spread. After Luo Fan obtained the ability to speak with law, if he made a move, it would naturally cause the void of the primordial world to change and receive the response of the supreme great Tao. As a result, when he made a slight movement, all sorts of strange phenomena would naturally appear. The most common were the light and fragrance. If he made a slight movement, there would be the sound of the great Tao, heavenly flowers, golden lotuses. These were not things that Luo Fan could control, nor did he do it on purpose. Smelling the strange fragrance that had suddenly appeared out of nowhere and looking at the light that had appeared out of nowhere, Olai and Ao Yin could not help but fall into endless shock. This light was born from the world and naturally had no source. It had appeared completely out of nowhere. Although it was not intense, even a blind person could see it clearly. This strange fragrance was also different from any other fragrance they had ever smelled. The stench was not very obvious, but even creatures without a sense of smell could smell it. It was as if it had directly stimulated their souls, making them feel like this was a fragrance. Seeing this phenomenon, Ao Lai and Ao Yin's minds naturally felt as if the great Tao was displaying its might in front of them. How could they not be shocked? In the depths of the cave, the sword-like origin of slaughter was condensed and compressed from boundlessly mysterious killing intent. Moreover, because it was a certain origin of slaughter in the primordial world, it had an extremely close and subtle connection with the supreme great Tao of the primordial world. This connection caused the entire origin of slaughter to completely fuse with the void. It could be said that it was one with the primordial world space. If one could not distort the primordial world space, it would only be wishful thinking to collect the origin of slaughter. Just as the fragrant multicolored light appeared, the space in front of Luo Fan began to distort more and more intensely. Along with the appearance of this mysterious distortion, the void in front of Luo Fan seemed to have broken into a black hole, causing all the killing intent in this huge cave to quickly gather towards this void. It was as if a hole had opened at the bottom of a swimming pool and was starting to leak. It was even more powerful and powerful than that. Along with the desolate killing aura gushing into this void, there were also countless different forms of killing beings that each contained the massacre intent. These slaughtering lives of varying strengths seemed to be pulled by invisible threads. They unceasingly set off from every corner of the cave, rushing towards the void in front of Luo Fan with incomparable speed. Regardless of anything else, they entered it and eventually disappeared without a trace. It was as if they had never appeared before. During the entire process, these killing intent did not resist or struggle. It was as if rushing into the space would bring them countless benefits. Luo Fan's eyes turned slightly and scanned the endless killing intent that rushed into the space. He used his mind to control the changes in the space in front of him and sealed the endless killing intent within. This process lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. After 3 days and 3 nights, besides the sharp sword in front of him, all the killing intent in the cave had entered the space in front of Luo Fan. After absorbing so much murderous chi, an indescribable change occurred in the void. The void seemed to have been dyed into a gray cloth. The void was 30 feet wide, and a faint gray color emanated from its source. It was as if the space was originally gray. Luo Fan's sun and moon true eyes could see through the source and directly illuminated this space. There were billions of three-dimensional talismans flashing and flowing inside, emitting a mysterious power aura at all times. This void was a mysterious seal that Luo Fan had created with the help of the supreme mysteries contained in the space of the primordial world. This seal specifically targeted the endless killing intent that originally filled the cave and the source of killing in front of him. The seal could contain endless killing intent, but it could not contain any fine sand. Luo Fan faintly smiled, raised his hand, and patted down towards the void. As he slapped the air, the gray void rippled like the surface of a calm lake after a stone was thrown into it. At the same time, the billions of mysterious and complicated three-dimensional talismans flowed even faster. Then, a mysterious sound of the great Tao suddenly appeared in this space. As soon as the sound of the great Tao entered the ears of Ao Lai and Ao In, they felt their minds clear up. Their souls and their seas of consciousness felt refreshed, and their breathing rate began to change according to the rhythm of the mysterious sound of the great Tao. The flow of power in their bodies seemed to have become smoother. What a mysterious sound. The two dragons looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes at the same time. Luo Fan did not care about what they were thinking. At this moment, his mind and will were in sync with the great Tao, allowing him to completely control the space within a radius of 49,000 kilometers. He slowly separated the nearly inseparable source of killing that had fused with the void of the primordial world. The source of killing was in sync with the supreme great Tao. Stripping it off was naturally not as easy as picking up a mung bean. The complicated variations and profound profundities contained within it were innumerable, and it required Luo Fan to utilize the various truths and supreme profundities of the heavens and the earth he comprehended after attaining the grand unity Tao fruit in order to strip it off. Even so, if Luo Fan made the slightest mistake, not only would he not be able to collect the source of killing, he might even cause the void to collapse and cause a backlash from the primordial world. If such a backlash happened, even if Luo Fan attained the primordial unity Tao fruit, he would definitely not be able to escape. He would definitely die, his Tao vanishing, and his soul dispersing. Naturally, Luo Fan was aware of this. With an indifferent expression, he used the supreme power of the primordial world to slowly separate the source of killing. Another 3 days passed. The sharp sword that stood between heaven and earth, completely fused with the space, shook. Along with this shake, the void within a radius of 5 million kilometers shook. At the same time, there was a loud rumble of thunder that seemed like the heavens were collapsing and the earth was splitting. Endless lightning flashed, and numerous lightning dragons moved about in the void. They wreaked havoc and stirred the astral wind, lightning, and fire layer above into chaos. After a long while, it gradually calmed down. At this moment, the sharp sword had already completely left the space. It no longer fused with the void and emitted an aura that could not be separated. Luo Fan smiled slightly. At this point, he was close to success. He raised his hand and waved it lightly. A mysterious power acted on the sharp sword that had already left the void. Under this mysterious power, the sharp sword and the 365 halos around it quickly compressed. Soon, it became a sharp sword that was 3 feet long and surrounded by 365 halos. With a light push, it entered the void in front of Luo Fan that had been dyed gray by the murderous aura. With a thought from Luo Fan, the void quickly compressed. Soon, it turned into a thin piece of silk. The surface of the silk was gray, and there was a faint sword shadow flashing on it. When one looked at the sword shadow, one could see more and more halos appearing and changing around it. With the appearance of the silk, the light, fragrance, and sound of the great Tao that had filled the depths of the cave for several days gradually weakened. After a while, it completely disappeared. Luo Fan was not surprised. He raised his hand and gently waved, putting the silk into his sleeve. He turned his head to look. He saw that Ao Lai and Ao Een seemed to be in a daze. The power within their bodies surged, and powerful auras were swallowing and spitting out of their bodies. It was obvious that they had comprehended some kind of profundity. After a long while, the two dragons turned around and saw that Luo Fan was standing there looking at them. They could not help but bow and beg for forgiveness and shame. Luo Fan did not mind. He said with a smile, "There is no need to beg for forgiveness. This matter is over. Follow me back." Understood. Ao Lai and Ao Een were overjoyed. However, they missed Mount Buzhou very much. After all, after being taken in by Luo Fan as the mountain guardian beast, their fates were linked to Buzhou Mountain. Buzhou Mountain had become their home. After being away from home for such a long time, they naturally missed it. Luo Fan thought. The auspicious cloud that had appeared several times, revealing the mysteries of the world and emitting the sound of the great Tao, appeared under his feet. It lifted him and Ao Een and Ao Lai up. The two dragons, Ao Lai and Ao Een, were mesmerized by the mystical auspicious clouds. Their expressions were very similar to old ancestor Sky Dragon. Luo Fan did not care about them. With a thought, the auspicious cloud floated slowly, and in the blink of an eye, it had already arrived on the ground. Looking down, the cave that was originally emitting endless killing intent had become incomparably ordinary. It was likely that in another thousands or tens of thousands of years, this cave would be filled up by the power of the earth change. After all, such a deep, ordinary cave had already violated the rules of the primordial world. If there was no other mysterious power supporting it, it would not be able to exist for long. He sighed slightly. He controlled the auspicious cloud to quickly head towards Buzhou Mountain. The speed of the auspicious cloud had already reached an unimaginable level. In a short while, it had traversed hundreds of millions of miles and arrived at the top of Buzhou Mountain. After dispersing the auspicious cloud, the two dragons woke up from their infatuation with some regret. They looked around and realized that they had already arrived at Buzhou Mountain. However, they were not as shocked as before. Compared to the various performances in the cave, this kind of speed was not worth mentioning at all. Luo Fan brought Ao Lai and Ao Een into the Seeking Cave and said to them, "You have improved so quickly in the past tens of thousands of years. After all, your foundation is not solid, and you still need to rely on external forces to refine your body. I have a lightning sea that contains endless earth lightning. Are you willing to enter and refine your body in order to refine your essence? We can't ask for more. Master, please be merciful." Ao Lai and Ao Een were overjoyed when they heard this. "All right, but you still need to wait a while. Fu'er will return in a few days, and you haven't seen him for tens of thousands of years. I think you should miss him a lot." Luo Fan smiled and said, "Young master." Ao Lai and Ao Een could not help but exclaim when they heard this. At the same time, their eyes were filled with uncontrollable joy. Ao Lai and Ao Een had watched Luo Fu grow up, and their feelings for Luo Fu were even deeper than their feelings for Luo Fan. To them, Luo Fu was like their own son, and they loved him dearly. Now that they heard that Luo Fu would arrive at Buzhou Mountain in a few days, how could they not be happy? Luo Fan was not speaking carelessly. Luo Fu was indeed heading towards Buzhou Mountain. Based on his current speed, it would only take him 9 days to reach the peak of Buzhou Mountain. I didn't expect him to be in the tribulation crossing realm. It seems that he has not slacked off in the past tens of thousands of years. The figure of Luo Fu was reflected in Luo Fan's mind, and a faint smile appeared on his face. Back then, Luo Fu was placed in the water domain by Luo Fan, and he even left the star meditation cushion with him, so that he could work hard to refine the water domain and the star meditation cushion. According to Luo Fan's calculations, Luo Fu should have refined the star meditation cushion and the water domain tens of thousands of years ago, and then returned to Buzhou Mountain, or went to the moon to look for his wife and son. Unexpectedly, Luo Fu was quite determined, and after refining the water domain and the star meditation cushion, he cultivated in the water domain for 1,000,000 years. Up until now, he'd already cultivated to the peak of the tribulation crossing realm, and based on his appearance, he would probably be able to successively overcome 9 heavenly tribulations in a few years and attain the earthly immortal Tao fruit. Leaving the water domain and the star meditation cushion to him all those years ago really was the wrong decision. Luo Fan smiled lightly, and a strand of gratification and pride surged within his mind. After Luo Fu refined and changed the water domain according to the method left behind by Luo Fan, it already possessed the ability to move time. Under Luo Fu's intentions, these tens of thousands of years of time had been stretched to an entire 1,000,000 years. Being able to endure these 1,000,000 years of loneliness and solidify his foundation to such an extent was sufficient to prove how firm Luo Fu's will was, and it was sufficient to prove how tenacious his heart was in seeking the Tao. With such will and heart to seek the Tao, even if Luo Fu's cultivation was only at the level of an ant in Luo Fan's eyes after his improvement, it was sufficient to make him feel gratified and proud of Luo Fu. Over the next few days, Luo Fan and Aolai and Aoyin waited for Luo Fu's arrival in the rope-seeking cave. During this process, Aolai and Aoyin knew that Luo Fan was deliberately giving them an opportunity. Although they were anxious to see Luo Fu, they also seized the time to seek answers from Luo Fan about the various cultivation problems they'd encountered in the past tens of thousands of years. Luo Fan had originally intended to guide them in their cultivation, so he didn't refuse them and answered all of the questions Aolai and Aoyin asked. After attaining the Grand Unity Tao fruit, Luo Fan was completely different from before. His actions and words contained boundless profundities. Often, a single sentence, a single expression, or a single action would solve the problems that Aolai and Aoyin had accumulated over the past tens of thousands of years. This made the two dragons feel as if they were facing the great Tao, and they could even feel their cultivation constantly rising. They felt that the mysteries of the great Tao were unprecedentedly clear. Time passed quickly during this process, and before they knew it, 9 days and 9 nights had passed. On this day, Luo Fan smiled faintly and stopped Aolai and Aoyin, who were about to continue asking questions. Fu has arrived. Wait for me to bring him in. Aolai and Aoyin were slightly confused when they heard this. After a while, they came to their senses. There was a trace of regret and a trace of joy in their eyes. They were regretful because they knew that the opportunity for Luo Fan to answer their cultivation problems had passed. It would be difficult to find another opportunity like this in the future. They were naturally happy because Luo Fu had returned, and they could see the Luo Fu that they hadn't seen for tens of thousands of years. They immediately bowed and hurried out of the rope-seeking cave together. The moment they arrived outside the rope-seeking cave, they saw a sky-blue streak of light quickly flying towards Buzhou Mountain. This streak of light contained an aura that the two dragons were extremely familiar with. In an instant, they knew that this sky-blue streak of light was the Luo Fu that they had missed so much. The streak of light was extremely fast, and it traversed thousands of kilometers in the blink of an eye. It descended in front of the Seeker Cave, and it condensed to reveal a handsome young man in a sky-blue robe. Although there were many changes to his appearance, the familiar silhouette and aura allowed Aolai and Aoyin to instantly recognize him as Luo Fu. Young master, Ally and Aoin called out excitedly. Uncle Ao and Ao, why are you two here? The person who had arrived was none other than Luo Fu. He was even more surprised to see Ally and Aoin. Just as Ally and Aoin had deep feelings for Luo Fu also had deep feelings for these two divine guardian beasts who had watched him grow up, played with him, and cleaned up after him. To Ally and Aoin, the last time they had met was only tens of thousands of years ago, but to him, it had already been millions of years. Compared to Ally and Aoin, Luo Fu missed them even more. Immediately, Luo Fu stepped forward and hugged Ally and Aoin, almost unable to speak. Good. I didn't think that the young master had already become so powerful. It looks like you're no weaker than the cultivators I've seen. Ao Lai could feel the power in Luo Fu's body, and he was extremely excited. At this moment, Luo Fu's entire body was exuding an extremely indescribable aura. It was as if he didn't exist in this world, but at the same time, he was extremely eye-catching, attracting everyone's attention. Incredibly powerful fluctuations of power were emanating from his body. Every movement he made caused the vital energy around him to fluctuate, as if he could command it at will. There were even wisps of mysterious, colorless, and transparent power seeping out of his acupoints, stirring up the vital energy and producing wisps of lightning. All of this was a clear indication of how powerful Luo Fu was. Chapter 330. 12 Heavenly Tribulations, Extremely Ambitious. Uncle Ao, you don't have to praise me. My father prepared everything for me to be where I am today. If not for father, I'm afraid I would still be living a muddle-headed life in the Yellow Springs. Luo Fu was still very clear-headed as he said. Luo Fu was already very clear about his own background. He knew that his original body was only the most ordinary formless rune ghost in the Yellow Springs. Of course, this did not affect his relationship with Luo Fan. Instead, it made him respect and admire Luo Fan even more. All right, the old master is waiting for you in the cave. Quickly follow us in. Hearing Luo Fu mention his father, Ao Lai reacted and hurriedly said. Ao Lai and Ao Yin knew about Luo Fu's original body, but they didn't care. Oh, father is really in the cave? When Luo Fu heard this, he couldn't help but be even more happy. After so many years, Luo Fu had long since become familiar with Luo Fan's style. He knew that Luo Fan often traveled around and rarely stayed in his own cave. He had only come to the Buzhou Mountains seeking cave to try his luck, but he didn't expect Luo Fan to really be here. At this time, the man and the two dragons had naturally separated. Ao Lai faintly smiled, and together with Ao Yin, they pulled Luo Fu into the cave. Ao Yin was a female, so she was much more emotional than Ao Lai. Ao Lai had mostly returned to normal, but her eyes were still filled with tears. It was obvious that she was unable to control her emotions and was about to cry. Seeing Ao Yin like this, Luo Fu was moved and only comforted her. Not long later, they arrived at the depths of the cave and saw Luo Fan. Ao Yin naturally did not dare to be presumptuous in front of Luo Fan. She barely managed to hold back her tears, but she still looked at Luo Fu with joy. Luo Fan sat cross-legged and looked at Luo Fu, who was walking in slowly, with a happy smile on his face. Your son pays his respects to father. May father live forever. Luo Fu's eyes reddened when he saw Luo Fan. He immediately knelt down and paid his respects. The last time he met Luo Fan was over 1,000,000 years ago. After such a long period of time, he naturally missed Luo Fan very much, so he couldn't help but feel excited when they met again. Luo Fan smiled and waved his hand lightly. An invisible force appeared out of nowhere and directly lifted Luo Fu up. He said, Good. There's no need to kneel. Quickly get up and talk. Luo Fu naturally could not resist Luo Fan's power, and would not resist either. He only stood up and said, This child obeys. Not bad. To be able to endure loneliness and cultivate for 1,000,000 years, as expected of my son. Luo Fan looked at Luo Fu and said with a smile, "Thank you for your praise, Father. This is all because of Father's teachings." Luo Fu was naturally very happy to be praised by Luo Fan. As he grew older, Luo Fu no longer called Luo Fan father. Instead, he called him father. This was not because he was estranged from Luo Fan, but because he already had children. It felt awkward to call him that way, so he naturally changed the way he addressed him. Luo Fan smiled and asked, "How is the refining of the water domain and the star praying mat going? Has the star praying mat turned into a treasure?" This child is ashamed. The water domain has already merged with the sun and moon in my chest. This is the effect of being able to change the flow of time. However, although I have refined the star praying mat as I wish, it is too profound and complicated. Although I want to refine it into a treasure, I don't know why, but I'm always a little short. I can't break through the heavenly limit. It is the same for that treasure. I don't know why. Luo Fu said with a little shame. The magic tool that Luo Fu was talking about was the one that Luo Fan had given Luo Fu in the beginning. It could change its shape at will, and it could almost be used at will. It couldn't be said to be omnipotent, but it had many uses and was extremely powerful. I see. This is not your fault. Luo Fan did not care at all. He only smiled and said, "Oh, could it be that there is some connection? Please give me some pointers, Father." When Luo Fu heard this, he could not help but be surprised. "We are father and son. Why are you so polite? Let me explain it to you, and you will understand." Although the difference between a treasure and a treasure with 36 restrictions seems to be only a little, that little difference represents the difference between heaven and earth. To become a treasure, not only do you need power and materials, you also need the most important thing, which is spirituality. Luo Fan said with a smile, "After more than 1,000,000 years of cultivation, you were able to cultivate the Dantian spirit shaping technique to the peak of the crossing disaster realm. The power that you have accumulated is even more than a normal cultivator. However, as long as you do not prove your Tao, you will not be able to give spirituality to the treasure. Naturally, the treasure will not be able to become a treasure." I see. No wonder I've been working hard for hundreds of thousands of years, but have not improved at all. Luo Fu could not help but understand. If that is the case, when I prove my Tao, it will be when these two treasures become treasures. Exactly. Luo Fan nodded and said with a smile, "Then I can rest assured." With Luo Fan's confirmation, Luo Fu was relieved. "When will your heavenly tribulation come?" Luo Fan asked. "It should be at noon on the 9th year, 3 months, and 8 days. Luo Fu was not surprised that Luo Fan knew that he was about to go through the heavenly tribulation and answered without hesitation. "As I expected." Luo Fan nodded. His expression was rather indifferent. When his true eyes of sun and moon shone on Luo Fu, he had already grasped Luo Fu's state. He could see through the inside of Luo Fu's body, his senses inside and outside, and everything inside and outside of his soul. What Luo Fu cultivated was the Dantian spirit shaping technique that Luo Fan had specially created for him. This mysterious technique was divided into 6 major realms: Qi refinement, core formation, godly fire, deity reversion, adversity crossing, and earthly immortal. Among them, after cultivating to the deity reversion realm, a postnatal life form could return to the innate realm, open the door to the innate realm, and condense an innate body, an innate God, and obtain the same cultivation aptitude and power essence as the innate gods. When cultivating to the earthly immortal realm, it would be equivalent to attaining the earthly immortal Tao fruit and stepping into the level of the itinerant immortal realm. At this moment, Luo Fu had already cultivated this cultivation technique to the peak of the adversity crossing realm. He only needed to pass the final heavenly tribulation to attain the earthly immortal Tao fruit and step into the immortal Tao. But you are too ambitious. You are a postnatal life form that has cultivated an innate body. The number of heavenly tribulations you have is different from your senior brothers and junior sisters. They only need to pass 9 heavenly tribulations, but you need to pass as many as 12. Now that you have accumulated these 12 heavenly tribulations in one place and triggered them at the same time, the power of the heavenly tribulation will increase by 1,000 times. I'm afraid that even the cultivators of the itinerant immortal realm will find it difficult to resist. It is too risky. Luo Fan sighed. Please forgive me, Father. I am a postnatal life form. If I don't do everything I can to improve myself, I will be utterly unable to keep up with Father's footsteps. But I have no choice but to do this. Luo Fu said respectfully. Since that's the case, it's up to you. Luo Fan sighed. Under normal circumstances, Luo Fu would separately pass 12 heavenly tribulations in the adversity crossing realm. Through these 12 heavenly tribulations, he would slowly condense the energy within his body into magic power units, and finally transform his energy into magic power. In this way, even though it was slightly dangerous, it was still considered safe. But besides this, there was another method to overcome the heavenly tribulation. That was to use a secret technique to conceal one's aura and not trigger the heavenly tribulation. This caused the accumulation of the 12 heavenly tribulations that should have been spread over tens of thousands of years to be triggered at the same time and superimposed together to pour down. This method would increase the power of the heavenly tribulation by 1,000 times compared to the heavenly tribulation that was spread over tens of thousands of years, and the danger would increase by countless times. But at the same time, after using this method to overcome the heavenly tribulation, due to the strength of the heavenly tribulation and the fact that one had a strong foundation, he would be able to reach the peak of the itinerant immortal stage as soon as he attained his Tao fruit. After attaining his Earth Immortal Tao fruit, the power would be 1,000 times stronger than the previous method. Obviously, Luo Fu wanted to use this method to overcome the heavenly tribulation and attain his Tao fruit. This ambition could not be said to be small. Thank you for understanding, Father. Luo Fu bowed. Since you have such great ambitions, I can only support you. 9 years, 3 months, and 8 days. Even though this period of time is short, there are many ways to lengthen it. Follow me into the Infinite Void Palace. Once I teach you some methods to overcome the heavenly tribulation, you will be able to rely on them to overcome the heavenly tribulation. Luo Fan smiled. Even though the heavenly tribulation that Luo Fu would encounter would be 1,000 times stronger and even be enough to destroy an itinerant immortal cultivator, he was not worried. He had an infinite number of techniques. Any one of them would be enough to greatly improve Luo Fu's strength. Coupled with Luo Fu's strong foundation, it would not be too difficult for him to overcome the heavenly tribulation. Thank you, Father. Luo Fu was overjoyed. Even though he was quite ambitious and wanted to reach the peak of the itinerant immortal realm after overcoming the heavenly tribulation, he also knew his own limits and knew the danger. He knew that if he did not cultivate other techniques and only relied on his own strength, the 2 Dharma artifacts, and the water elemental realm, the probability of him surviving the heavenly tribulation was probably less than 1 in 10. But with Luo Fan's promise to teach him, the probability would immediately increase greatly. Even if it did not reach 100% chance, there was still a 99% chance. Luo Fan nodded and turned to Ao Lai and Ao Yin, whose expressions were constantly changing as Luo Fan and Luo Fu conversed, and said, "You 2 dragons can also follow me into the Infinite Void Palace. The Lightning Sea is there." "Thank you, Master, for your guidance." Ao Lai and Ao Yin hurriedly bowed and thanked him. "No need to be so polite," Luo Fan said. With that said, he moved his mind. The Infinite Void Palace and his sea of consciousness turned into a yellow light and rushed outside his body, turning into a square palace that was 10 feet in size. The square palace turned slightly, and Luo Fu, Ao Lai and Ao Yin, 1 man and 2 dragons instantly disappeared from Luo Fan's cave abode. When they reappeared, they were in the palace within the Infinite Void Palace's Lightning Sea. This palace was a very mysterious place within the Infinite Void Palace. Space and time were very mysterious, as if they existed and didn't exist at the same time. The entire hall was like an island in the middle of the earthy yellow sea of lightning. Endless yellow light was emitted from the lightning sea, illuminating the entire mysterious place clearly and emitting an indescribable sense of steadiness and majesty. Luo Fu was no longer a small cultivator of the deity reversion stage like before, and Aolai and Aoin were no longer magic treasures like before. Therefore, when one man and two dragons came to this palace, they immediately sensed the mysterious aura that filled the surroundings. They sensed how mysterious and incredible this space-like area was. They could also feel how amazing Luo Fan, who created this place, was. After a while, Luo Fu let out a long breath and said, "Father, how did this place become like this?" "This place isn't a minor kiliocosm," Luo Fan said with a smile. "It's the support of a world, a place that contains a world." Off to the side, Proudlight interjected, "Master, your abilities are truly impressive. I didn't expect you to learn how to flatter me," Luo Fan said with a smile. "These words come from the bottom of my heart," Ao Lai quickly said. Luo Fan shook his head, but didn't pursue the matter. He said to Luo Fu, "Go take a look around and pick a room, then come see me here. I'll send the two dragons to temper their bodies first." "Yes," Luo Fu nodded. As they spoke, a lightning spirit came up to guide Luo Fu around and pick a room. Luo Fan turned his head to face the two dragons, Ao Lai and Ao In, and said, "Are you two ready?" "Yes." Ao Lai and Ao In replied with solemn expressions. "Good. I'll leave a divine ability in your bodies that will protect your souls. After 10 periods, I'll come to pick you up," Luo Fan said. Ao Lai and Ao In nodded in thanks. Luo Fan didn't hesitate. He reached out and grabbed at the air. Ao Lai and Ao In transformed into black and white rays of light that twisted in midair. In the blink of an eye, they had transformed into a 3-foot-long golden scissors that exuded a desolate, killing intent. The golden scissors constantly emitted faint fluctuations. These fluctuations seemed to contain some sort of indescribable mystery, some sort of inconceivable power, and strange roars could be heard. With a slight thought from Luo Fan, a ring of light that didn't seem to exist yet seemed extremely conspicuous and dazzling appeared out of thin air and enveloped the golden flood dragon scissors. Then, he raised his hand and the pair of golden scissors disappeared into thin air. When it reappeared, it was deep in the sea of lightning where the concentration of earth lightning was extremely high. Just as the golden scissors entered the sea of lightning, the earth lightning suddenly surged. Endless lightning flashed, wrapping around the golden scissors like a cocoon. Among them, there were even balls of solid earth lightning that appeared out of thin air and collided with the golden scissors. The numerous beings formed from lightning were like sharks that had smelled blood, and they quickly swam towards the golden WIRM scissors from all directions. At this time, a faint ring of light suddenly flashed on the surface of the golden scissors. This ring of light expanded and trembled slightly. As it expanded and trembled, the life forms formed from endless lightning seemed to have lost their target. Although they were still running around, they couldn't find their target at all. The surrounding earth thunder and lightning that were charging towards the golden flood dragon scissors were suddenly weakened by a lot. After the Ao Lai and Ao In dragons circulated the golden WRM dragon transformation Dao to form the golden WIRM scissors, their divine souls fused together, giving birth to a consciousness that contained the two dragons. However, it was different from the two dragons' consciousnesses. It was more complex and mysterious. This consciousness was the treasure spirit of the golden scissors. The moment the endless attacks arrived, the treasure spirit felt an indescribable pain wrapping around him. At this moment, his body was enveloped by an incomparably stable and dignified power from the inside out, attacking him. In an instant, he felt the impurities in his body slowly being eliminated. His body, as the treasure spirit, was also cleansed during this process and became pure. It really is effective. Although it was painful, the treasure spirit was very happy. The golden scissors was protected by Luo Fan's technique. Although it had to withstand the endless attacks, it didn't exceed its limit. For the treasure spirit, it wasn't in much danger and could enjoy the process of continuous improvement. Therefore, at this moment, the treasure spirit entered a state of oblivion. Luo Fan controlled the entire palace of the infinite void and naturally knew the performance of the golden scissors. Seeing the treasure spirit enter a state of oblivion, Luo Fan couldn't help but smile and admire it. I hope that you can comprehend the various methods I've taught you in these 10 periods. Such a thought flashed through Luo Fan's mind. After a while, Luo Fu arrived at the main hall under the guidance of the Thunder Spirit. It was obvious that he had found his own room. "Father, I have picked my room." Luo Fu bowed. He didn't mention what room he had picked. To them, it didn't matter what room it was. It was a small matter, and there was no need to explain. "Have you seen your junior brother, Lei Jiuxiao?" Luo Fan nodded and asked. "I have not seen him. According to the Thunder Spirit, junior brother Jiuxiao seems to be cultivating behind closed doors. I didn't go and disturb him," Luo Fu replied. "It's okay. There will be plenty of time in the future. The flow of time here is 133,325 times faster than in the primitive world. 9 years, 3 months, and 8 days. There should be more than 10 eras. There's plenty of time," Luo Fan said. 133,325 times. Luo Fu's eyes were filled with shock. Changing time was something he had already experienced before. Whether it was Luo Fan's mini Kiliacosm, the illusionary land of time and space, or even the water realm he created, they all had the ability to change the flow of time. But to him, changing the flow of time by such a large margin was too unbelievable. Compared to that, the changes in the flow of time that he had seen before were just trash and not worth mentioning. However, thinking of Luo Fan's ability, the shock in his eyes was naturally concealed. With Father's ability, it is natural that you can do this. Why should I be surprised? Such a thought flashed across Luo Fu's mind. Luo Fan smiled and said, "Although accelerating to such a speed will cause the primordial qi to be slightly thinner, it will only not be able to support the improvement of your cultivation. Your accumulation of power is already complete. It doesn't matter if the primordial qi is a little thinner. Besides, the technique that I passed to you doesn't really need such a long time to cultivate. When you finish cultivating, you can leave this place and absorb the primordial qi in the primitive world to increase your strength.